Good morning. We'd like to welcome everybody out to our Mesa City Council study session for the morning of Thursday, November the 21st. All of our council is present. Prior to beginning our study session, we do have on our agenda a special council meeting to canvass the election. So I call the special council meeting to order. And again, all of our council are present. Item 1A is a resolution canvassing, declaring, and adopting the results of the general election held on November the 5th, 2024. Congratulations, Mayor-elect Freeman and Councilmember-elect Adams. We'd like to thank the citizens for approving our public safety, parks, recreation, and culture bonds, all with record. I don't remember the last time something passed was 70%, so thank you very much. And our general plan and permanent base adjustment.
Yeah, let's say permanent base adjustment, that was like number one.
Yeah.
And the bonds and the general plan. It was amazing, Mayor, to get almost 70% on all four. It's just a landslide.
Yeah.
And very, very impressive.
That's good. Well, we're very grateful to the voters for their support of those questions. Do any council members wish to speak on this item? Ms. Mosley, do we have any requests to speak on this item?
No, we do not, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the resolution canvassing the election? Thank you, Mr. Summers and Ms. Spilsbury. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you. That passes unanimously. Next are items from citizens present. Ms. Mosley, do we have any requests to speak on this agenda item?
No requests.
Thank you. That's everything we have on the agenda for this special council meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Ms. Goforth and Mr. Vice Mayor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned. We will now convene our City Council study session for November the 21st. Again, all of our council are present. Item 1 on our agenda for this meeting is to review our Monday, December 2nd council meeting agenda. Council, any questions off the bat regarding that agenda?
Mayor, we do have a few presentations.
Great.
So, Mayor, you want to go first? So this is item 6C, is that correct? Yeah, 6C, Fiesta Redefined. This is a significant development opportunity in Mesa. We've been working for a couple of years with the property owner at Fiesta. We continue to have discussions, but this was a significant planning process between the staff and the applicant, and we just wanted to give council kind of a summary of what's being proposed. Mary?
Thank you, City Manager. Mayor, Council, we're really excited today to bring Fiesta Redefined to City Council to go through a process that we've been working on for a year or so to develop a new zoning code for this piece of property. Evan's going to walk you through the process, and we're here to answer any questions that you might have about it. This is on the agenda for the 2nd.
Thank you, Mary. Good morning, Mayor, Council. This is case ZON 23-00859, which is Fiesta Redefined. The specific request is to rezone the Fiesta Mall property from limited commercial to the Infill Development District 2, ID2. The purpose is to allow for a mixed-use development. I'm sure we're all familiar with the location of the subject site, but this is located between Alma School and Longmore, north of the US 60, and it does have access to Southern Avenue on the north. The general plan character area for this property is mixed-use activity with a regional scale subtype. The purpose of the regional scale mixed-use activity district is generally larger properties over 60 acres that have significant areas devoted to commercial with supported integrated residential uses. It's also kind of the anchor of the Fiesta sub-area. That really focuses on pedestrian-friendly environments with an integrated mix of land uses. The current zoning on the property is LC, as I mentioned, and the request is to rezone to ID2. The ID districts, the infill districts, facilitate the development, or in this case, the redevelopment of bypassed, underutilized, or abandoned properties. This isn't a zoning district that we use a lot. If this were to be approved, this would be the 4th infill district in the city. The reason for that is there's some really specific applicability requirements to be able to rezone to an ID district. The first is that it has to meet the definition of a bypass parcel. Then there's some additional requirements too for the infill district. So the definition of a bypass parcel is a parcel or parcels, in this case, where the total developable land area within 1,200 feet of that property is not more than 25% vacant, and greater than 50% of the number of the lots or parcels within 1,200 feet have been developed 15 or more years ago. So when we take a look at that, the image on the right is the area within 1,200 feet from 2009. In 2009, it was only 1.6% vacant. The image on the left is what it is today. When we look at that, it's only 1.2% vacant, so it meets that definition of a bypass parcel.
I think we have a question for you.
Oh, infill district. I was going to just ask, what does ID stand for? Is that what-
Infill development district, yes.
Infill.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I haven't run across that. So.
It's a unique one. The zoning ordinance also lays out 6 criteria that a property needs to meet to be considered for an infill district. Of those 6, we need to find that it meets 3 of those. When we look at those, the first is there's a higher percentage of vacant, old, or dilapidated buildings or structures. There's a high percentage of vacant or underutilized parcels of property or obsolete or inappropriate lot sizes or buildings designed for obsolete uses. There's a high percentage of buildings or other places where nuisances exist. The absence of development and investment in activity compared to other areas of the city. Also that there's a high occurrence of crime or there's a continuing decline in population within that specific infill district. So when we look at this, I think we all remember Fiesta Mall was really an economic engine for decades in Mesa, but as other malls opened and kind of the landscape of commercial changed, it began to lose tenants and deteriorate. By 2019, it was completely vacant. It was demolished last year, and in those intervening years, there's a lot of calls for police service, for vandalism, trespassing, those sorts of things. So when we look at these, staff actually found that it meets 5 of these criteria. The only one it didn't meet was the last one, which is a continuing decline in population because there were no residential units within Fiesta Mall. One of the really unique aspects of the the infill incentive districts is that you need to develop an infill incentive plan for ID2 districts. And that's really the regulatory document. It's essentially the zoning ordinance for this specific property. This one is really design-based, and to help facilitate that, city staff hired a consultant, Angela Wu, who's here from Cohen Pedersen Fox, to really work with the applicant's designer to really make sure that we get the best design guidelines and design standards that we can to make sure that this develops as the city anticipates it. So within the ID2 district, as I mentioned, you have to do the infill incentive plan, and it allows for specific modifications. One is to development regulations, which are land uses, development standards, setbacks, heights, that sort of thing, and also the review and development procedures, so that's your processes, timeframes, and it also includes design guidelines. So to make sure that this really develops as a mixed-use, walkable, pedestrian-friendly development, there's a few unique things about this infill incentive plan. The first concept is development blocks, and it sets the framework for future development while also allowing for flexibility for the project to react to market conditions, and ensures a pedestrian-friendly environment through a mixture of uses. So when you look at the image on the right, you'll see most of it is that teal color, which is multifamily commercial office. The plan is less focused on saying commercial goes here and residential goes there, and it's really prescriptive. Instead, we work on the design and the development blocks. The other part I wanted to point out is there's a dark green section with blue on the ends. That's the village green right up off of the ring road on Alma School Road. I'll come back to that in just a minute, but that's also a very important part. When we look at the development blocks a little bit closer, the blocks themselves are not set. So there's a chance that the end development looks like the image on the left, but the blocks might change a little bit. There are some parameters for pedestrian connections if blocks get too long and things like that. But there's also some unique features, and if we start at the north and we work our way south down that main north-south drive, the blue dashes that you see on either side of that main drive and around the village green is the primary building wall area. So there is no maximum height in the ID2 district, and the idea is that hopefully in the future we can get some height and some additional density there. But there are minimum heights in this specific area. If we follow that north-south street south, those dashed lines indicate an area where the minimum height is 30 feet, and that you also need to have 85% block frontage. And that means we need buildings or active open space or residential development that opens onto that encompasses 85% of that block. The idea being the other 15% are drive aisles to access the parking, which should be located behind the buildings. The light green areas around the Village Green are your primary ground floor commercial areas. Those are the areas where we primarily anticipate ground floor commercial. The area in light blue along Longmore is the secondary area. That it will likely reflect the development patterns on the other side of Longmore. So again, parking in the back, but that might be a grocer or a larger retailer that kind of needs their own footprint. The darker blue areas on the corners that you see there are pedestrian enhancement areas. Those could be art installations, it could be benches and seating, it could be unique signage. It's areas to kind of make those more pedestrian friendly, to add some amenities. On the right, you can see two diagrams of what that building frontage would look like. So on the top, you can see that pink line being that building outline. We want that building or active uses covering as much of that block as possible. So there's two examples of what that might look like in function. The IIP is based on the limited commercial zoning district. So the applicant kind of used that as a base and modified from that point for this development. There are a number of uses that are permitted in the LC zoning district but are restricted in the IIP. I won't get into all of them, but some of the, I think, notable ones are all of the automobile-related uses. So sales, washing, auto repair, mini storage is prohibited, warehousing and storage. There's another category of uses that are permitted in the LC district but are limited in the IIP. So assisted living centers, nursing, convalescent homes would require a council use permit once a certificate of occupancy has been issued for 2,000 residential units. So this could be a great complementary use. We don't necessarily want it to be the first thing in, but it could be a great use for a holistic development. Drive-throughs, we did not restrict the number of drive-throughs, but we restricted their location. So on the right, you can see those dark blue areas on the Longmore frontage and the southern frontage. I would note there are currently 3 drive-throughs on the Alma School frontage. Those are the areas where drive-throughs would be permitted. Service stations would be limited to 2 and would also be restricted to those same areas that the drive-throughs were. So we don't want them on the interior of the site, but they might work along the frontages. The land use budget is another unique concept in the IIP. It allows for a maximum of 4,000 dwelling units and a minimum of 500,000 square feet of non-residential uses. So to ensure that we're getting that mixture of uses, the land use budget, you'll notice, is kind of broken into tiers. So the first tier is you can build up to 700 units with no additional commercial requirements because there are a few restaurants along Alma School Road. When we get into tier 2, that's 701 units to 1,200 units, there should be a minimum of 25,000 square feet of non-residential uses constructed. In addition, you'll notice a table at the bottom that says a qualifying list of publicly accessible non-residential amenities, and it has a point system. You need to pick three points from that chart. So it could be a park, which is 3 points. It could be public seating, which is 2 points, and something from the 1 point category. However that works, just so that we get 3 points. And the idea there is that we have publicly accessible amenities that are open to pedestrians that really makes it a more of a pedestrian-friendly environment. Kind of moving down the list, when we get to 2,000 units, that is, again, where assisted living would be permissible with a CUP. But then also when the Village Green needs to be constructed. And I'll talk about the Village Green in just a second, but that's a real focal point of the development. By the time we get to the 4,000 units, there would be a minimum of 500,000 square feet of non-residential uses and 10 points from the table below. So that's the parks, it's water features, it's shade structures, any combination that gets to a total of 10. Well, I should mention by 2,000 units, again, the Village Green would need to be constructed if it had not already been constructed. Development standards, again, I mentioned there is no maximum height in the IIP, but there is a minimum height in that area, that north-south area and the area along the Village Green. The setbacks vary from a minimum of 20 feet to a maximum of 30 feet, which allows for outdoor dining, it allows for outdoor amenity areas. While we want buildings all the way up to the street, we don't necessarily want a solid wall of building all at the same plane. So this allows for some movement in the buildings and some additional uses in the public areas. So the Village Green open space, again, is in the northeast corner of the site. It's the green area bordered by the 2 dark blue squares. That area would have 100% of building frontage adjacent to the Village Green. So that area around the Village Green would need to be 100% of those blocks would have buildings up on the street. The idea behind the Village Green is it could be a gathering space. They could do farmers markets. It would be essentially a park with commercial activating either end of that to really generate uses. There are also common open space and amenities required, as well as private open space for residential developments. The design standards and guidelines for the project are really kind of broken up into 4 main categories: site design and architectural features for both residential and commercial development. I won't spend a ton of time on this, but I think some of the highlights of this are when we look at residential site design, we want walkways that connect with surrounding amenities. There should be specialty landscaping, hardscaping, architectural features used to highlight building and site elements to create a strong sense of place. Porches and balconies kind of create that building articulation, and maximum and minimum setbacks to better define the public and private spaces. Architectural standards allow for a variety of architectural styles that incorporate local materials. Large buildings change materials or massing every 240 feet. Again, we want density and we want buildings. We don't necessarily want them all to look the same. So that allows for some variation in building design. And building facades should be composed of a variety of materials, colors, textures, artwork, and et cetera to really create that interest. Same thing for commercial. It's broken into site design and architectural design. The focus on commercial site design are buildings on the interior of a lot to provide pedestrian-friendly facade designs along the street frontage. The streets are really important. We really want to engage those. Architectural elements that anchor the building and create attractive paths to entries. Street-adjacent facades that provide pedestrian-scaled elements such as entries, windows, and building openings. And looking at architectural designs, it's the same concept. We're focused on massing and scale, articulation, material selection. We want unique entrances that are really framed by architectural features to create that kind of sense of place and that, again, that pedestrian engagement. The last unique feature of the infill incentive plan is the ability to modify processes and procedures. The processes and timeframes proposed in the IIP are largely consistent with our standard practices as far as timeframes and processes. The difference is that administrative review and approval for all site plan and design review requests is part of this. So once the IIP is approved and site plans come in, as long as they're meeting all the standards and everything in the IIP, it can be an administrative approval. Again, that allows for flexibility in adapting to market conditions as they change. The applicant is required to mail notices and post the site for all site plans. So we want citizen engagement for the people who live within that area. So even though these are administrative approvals, there are still notification processes to let residents know what is coming. There are also referral provisions that allow the planning director to refer cases to Planning and Zoning Board under specific circumstances. A citizen participation report is part of your packet, and this was a very extensive outreach. They did the standard mailed notification to property owners within 1,000 feet of the site, HOAs and registered neighborhoods, and they held a neighborhood meeting. They also held many smaller, small group meetings with various community organizations. They had one-on-one meetings with various stakeholders. There was a project website, multiple small group one-on-one meetings, as I mentioned. As of the writing of this, surprisingly, I have not gotten any phone calls from residents in the neighborhood. I think the applicant did a really good job of getting out there and engaging the public and really selling the project to residents. With that, as staff is recommending approval, we do find that it complies with the Mesa General Plan and the infill development districts. This went to the Planning and Zoning Board in October, and they did recommend approval with conditions by a vote of 5-0. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the council might have.
Thank you, Evan. Mayor, Council, just quickly, it's kind of moments like this that kind of feels like, oh, that doesn't sound so bad. That was pretty quick. We've been working on this since I got here, right? I remember Dennis Kavanaugh when I first got here, the discussion about, recognizing that Fiesta Mall was kind of on its way out and what the city was going to do. And as much as we've tried to kind of work on the perimeter and the streetscaping, and we've done some unique things around the Fiesta Mall area, its time had passed. And so what's unique about this property, I think what helped us and staff and kind of what helps us get very interested in this project is this is all under one ownership. Typically to do something like this, you would have to have multiple owners, try to assemble all the property. And so once that happened, and that took a while for that assembly of all this property to take place. So we're at 70 acres or more or less, 80 acres. I mean, that's a large, especially in a very urban setting, to have 80 acres of opportunity to redevelop. And so I think both sides wanted to take this very seriously in recognizing we needed to look at this even still with 80 acres to develop out 80 acres. That's going to take a long time, but we wanted to set a framework that we could work with for a long time. We have tried, this is one of the first times, I know this is the first time, but for a size project like this, where we made the decision to bring on outside consultants to assist us to make sure that we could get the details and get best practices from across the country. So we were looking for a national firm that could provide us that insight and really bring to us the latest kind of thinking about mixed-use development and infill development. And I think that was very helpful because the applicant also hired a very well-known planning consulting group. And so really we had two high-level professionals who have worked on this project, both for the city and the applicant. And that took quite a while. That was an ongoing process for several months.
Probably about 6 months.
Yeah.
6 months. Two significant planning consultants, professionals, well-respected in the field across the country working on this, and then bringing it back to the applicant and the staff, and then we kind of working through some of the details and getting direction. So I just want to thank the staff for their diligence in bringing this together. Councilman Heredia has always been kicking us and saying, when are we going to do something about Fiesta? We finally convinced once we had the property assembled, we were able to convince the property owner that probably the best way to sell this was to demolish and get the old buildings out of the way. So here we are. We're excited for the future of Fiesta going forward, and we're still in conversations with the property owner. Again, it's very unique that we have one property owner representing all of this area, so we're excited to keep moving forward. But I just want to thank staff and our consultants for their work on this, and frankly, the applicant. These are not easy conversations, but everybody was working towards the same goal. So thank you.
Thank you. This has been quite a journey to get to this point, and we appreciate the patience of everyone involved. And as Mr. Brady indicated, I think the fact that we have common ownership and we brought in world-class consultants, I think it took time, but it was very deliberate and intentional, and it was the right way to do this, and it's that important. It can't be rushed or done in anything less than the most professional way. So thank you. I very much enjoyed the presentation, and obviously a lot of good work has gone into this. Council, questions on this topic? Mr. Freeman.
So thank you for the presentation. Having gone to Fiesta Mall for decades and then seeing its demise was really, heartfelt. But seeing its resurrection coming back, I think that's really important. What's interesting to me that there was no or very little neighborhood input into some of the building of this or the way it's going to be structured. Is that right, Evan? Or was there a little bit?
Thank you, Mayor, Councilmember Freeman. So it was more that staff didn't get a lot of direct input from neighbors, but the applicant did a ton of outreach. So the applicant has been working on this with neighbors and neighboring property owners and stakeholders in the area for a number of months. So there has been a lot of outreach, has been a lot of input into the plan. the applicant developed a very robust citizen participation report that kind of outlines all of that. So there has been a tremendous amount of outreach.
Okay, I just like to see neighborhoods weigh in to what's going to be built around them. On the infill development -2, is there different categories of that between
That's a-
1, 2, 3, or 4?
That's a great question. And again, this is a district that we don't use a lot. There's an ID1 district, which is designed for really small properties. There's actually only one ID1 property, and it's way out in East Mesa on East Main Street. It was an auto dealership. So that is designed for very small developments. They generally use a base zoning district and kind of go from there. ID2 is for larger properties, and it requires the infill plans to really kind of nail down all of those details. So we don't use it a lot, but there are 2 infill districts.
So we hope to use the first one a
Yes.
lot more with Mr. Robbins' work.
Yes.
And we are looking at another ID2 right now. We're commencing
Right.
work on that. So we find it is becoming a good tool for us.
Okay, that's the 2 questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Duff?
Yeah, has a few questions. Thank you for all your work on this and having a consultant come in. This is a huge project, and I think it'll definitely be the Fiesta Mall, lack of a better name. What are we calling it? I don't know. I should create a new term for identifying the property. But it will be that mecca again that will draw well beyond Mesa. So thank you for putting the time and attention to this piece of property. So one of the things I realize that you're making it very pedestrian friendly within the property, but I'd like to also suggest looking for those opportunities on the perimeter properties that are not part of the project. Along Longmore, there's residential to the north, there's residential to the east on our new development there.
Right.
And the northeast corner, that shopping center is prime for possible redevelopment as we go forward. So this could be what we're talking, those village
Yeah.
centers, attracting the retail that we want, being very engaged in the surrounding area and being a place. So if we just make sure that we have those opportunities for the people to engage the residents, other commercial, so that if you're at one place, you can easily engage with the other, especially thinking about a grocer in that property, which would be welcomed, I'm sure, but you'll probably see a lot more pedestrian activity of people just running over and grabbing a few things and not taking car. We want them to do that. So more of a place by engaging the surrounding properties. And is there anything that, now you said the limit is 4,000 residential units, living units, right? Dwelling units, okay. What are our parameters to make sure, like we've seen in some other projects, where it ends up going primarily residential and the corner might have a commercial and we call it mixed use, or something like that, where it's really more dynamic and integrated? How can we ensure that we're not leaning, it ends up being really, truly mixed use?
Thank you, Mayor, Councilmember Duff. That's a great question. So when you look at the land use budget, there are tiers of, as I mentioned, each tier has residential units as part of that, but then there's also non-residential that has to be constructed. So the idea is, and that was to be frank, one of staff's concerns going in is we've seen that in the past, right, where we get a mixed-use development where it's mostly residential with commercial. But I think this tiered approach ensures that we get non-residential square footage as this progresses, and that it's not like the last thing that we've developed 75 acres and I need to put in commercial. This ensures that it kind of keeps pace with the residential development.
Evan, explain that, because this is important, because you're right. This has been a topic with some other developments, right? And it's a great point. But explain that tiering. So it means you can only build so many units, and then it's a stop until you build out. So kind of explain that part.
Yes, thank you. So when we look at the land use budget, the first tier up to 700 units, I think is pretty straightforward because there is some existing commercial. So if we start at the second tier, so when we get to 701 to 1,200 units, by the time we get to 1,200 units, the requirement is that there's 25,000 square feet of non-residential development that has been constructed. So if we get, let's say there's a scenario where we get 1,200 units, but there's only 15,000 square feet of commercial development that has been constructed, they can't build unit 1,201
Okay.
until we get that
That's how we're
commercial.
trying to manage that. We wish this would have been a nice tool.
Excellent. I have just one more comment, and then I know you're like,
And if I could also add, the public open space was also a really important part of that, and that's why you'll see there's a certain number of points in each of those tiers, because we don't want 700 people living on the site without any, or 701, that 701 unit coming in without any public amenities. So
Right.
that was also really part of this whole mixed-use concept, that it's not just buildings, it's also those public amenities, that public open space.
right. And there are some drive-throughs, again, on the east side and such, and, you know, they're grandfathered in, but I would like to, if we really want to make this a place, that we minimize drive-throughs, any service stations, anything that's going to create, that's not a sense of community, that's more of a convenience, and I think it'd be better located outside of the property. I understand that they're there, but I would not want to see any increases in any of that, just so that we have that opportunity to create place. Thanks.
I just had a follow-up question to those land use, what do you call land use budget requirements? So after the 700, and you have to do 25,000 square feet, how are we requiring those to be connected? I mean, can you build your 25,000 square feet on a different block, but it's there? I mean, how are we, and I guess I pose the question to you, is that something to think about and to ensure that it's not just on a different block, but it's actually integrated and, you know, and continues with that, that pedestrian theme or requirement that it's connected or really close, right?
So I think, sorry, Mayor, Councilmember Goforth, I think one of the things that we wanted to do was provide some flexibility. So there may be 25,000 square feet of Trader Joe's or something, grocery store that goes in that may not be specifically adjacent to where the residential is going. But what we've done is through the design guidelines and standards, that connectivity is required. So the roads, the sidewalks, the gathering areas, the open space, all of those things are required to be able to connect those things. So making it be a mixed-use building or mixed use on the same block, they may be a little bit further apart, but ultimately what'll happen is this is going to be an incremental development. This is going to be something that develops over probably 2 decades. And so as those things start to develop and the property values start to rise, you're gonna see those things all coming together and integrating.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, and we don't want to overly regulate it, for sure. We want to allow some flexibility, but I don't see how you're going to ensure this is any different than what we've mostly seen in the past in Mesa, where it's adjacent. It's land use adjacent, right? And it's not truly activated together. So I can see how your residential is going to grow, your commercial is going to grow, and then, but they're not necessarily truly authentically integrated.
I think
Again, I think it's difficult, right? And you have market conditions and things like that that developers have to think about, for sure. But I guess I'm curious, how do you, and I know you say there's connections, but there's connections when, in a traditional, residential, commercial sense that exists today, right? There's still connections. I'm talking true integration.
Right, Mayor, Councilmember Goforth, and I think that's a great question. I think Evan has the proper diagram up, and it is these development blocks that require that a certain amount of any street, and if we want, we can bring Angela up from KPF to answer any additional questions. But we've got these development blocks that require that we're having a street frontage and facade, so it's not a more suburban style of development that we see in other places. So that we won't just have landscaping with all of these breaks in that block. That urban, that building frontage on those blocks is so important, and it is a requirement. Those block lengths, the block percentage, those are all defined as one of those development standard or design standards. We've also got the open space, which is going to be probably one of the best features of the site once it gets developed. And with the commercial surrounding it, they're going to want to be around that open space. And then the residential will want to be near that open space and all of that commercial. So I think that open space is kind of a magnet for that integrated development that you're talking about. I think the development blocks, these block lengths, the building frontage requirements, all of those things are built together to help us to get to that type of development that you're talking about, yet still provide the flexibility, as we know this is going to be a slow process.
I think that's a good point, Mary. I think having those smaller blocks and that frontage requirement, hopefully that'll work. That'll do it. So, thank you.
Mr. Summers.
Is the applicant here?
Wendy's here, yeah?
Yes.
I'd actually like to hear from the applicant about what the vision is for this area. What kind of experience do you have building that kind of vertically integrated, walkable, mixed-use project? All I see are two-dimensional photos that I got 2 days ago when this was uploaded. I haven't had a single meeting, so I don't know what's in this. So I would like to hear from the applicant about what's the vision? What does this really look like as it builds up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Summers, Wendy Riddell with the law firm Barry Riddell, 6750 East Camelback. My pleasure to be here on behalf of Verde Investment, Mr. Garcia. The goal here, Mr. Brady was correct, was to assemble this property so it could be part of a comprehensive vision, create a very walkable, pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use, vibrant type of development. Councilwoman Goforth, you raised, how do we make sure this isn't just more of the same? The answer to that is we very patiently made sure it was all assembled together. It's under one set of unique design guidelines to develop in a way that the pieces do work together, that the infrastructure is all dictating that it is development that occurs together. You have the mix of uses, you have commercial, you have multifamily, to create that vibrant Mesa development.
And just quick, Wendy, quick point, and Councilman Summers, Mayor Councilman Summers, is what you'll notice with this zoning case, there's no development agreement.
Yeah,
That's going
I
to come.
noticed.
So we're talking, the applicant is the property owner. We foresee at some point, once this is approved, the opportunity to have the applicant could be the developer, but there's also a belief, a property this large, right, is going to require, I don't know if it's going to be one developer, it's going to be multiple developers. And with the development agreement, we'll begin to address some very more specifics about, the actual look and the types of development that'll come in, because the development agreement will consider the quality, the types of uses that are going to come in, and how we will use the city's leverage to make that happen in the development agreement. So there's no development agreement in front of council. There won't be by the time you approve this, but the developer will want to come back when we get to the point of actually contemplating these specific actually verticality of coming out of here, and we'll be able to do it. This is the framework, which is important, we think, to attract a very high quality development to go forward.
This is a zoning case, right?
That's
Correct.
So we're gonna, but usually a development agreement is attached to the zoning. Because
Right.
once we zone it, we don't have a whole lot of leverage after that. So why are we zoning it without a DA?
So, Mayor and Councilmember Summers, we did that intentionally in this case. We wanted to hold off on the development agreement until we had greater detail, the kind of detail that you were talking about on a site-specific project, a site plan, so we could see the quality, and hopefully also even know maybe some of the end users. And so before we provide any development agreement that has incentives in it, we want to see that we have the integration that the council wants to see within the larger development, that we see the type of quality, and that we see the actual development that's actually going to occur. We didn't want to have a development agreement with incentives this early on, and so we want to hold that back until we see what the council really wants.
Well, what would be the need of zoning this now then without a DA or putting all that together? Why aren't we putting this whole package
wait.
together all at once?
Councilman Summer, it's to attract the type of users you guys want here. I mean, my client is not necessarily the developer of this site, but they have very patiently assembled it, worked very hard with your staff through 9 submittals to make sure we've got a framework for this type of mixed-use integrated development that you want. But we are not necessarily the developer. We
Right.
want to bring these type of users and attract them to the site, so we would then, be coming back forward.
And then the developer will be at the table with us, the specific, who's going to implement a specific vision. Then we'll be able to have site plans, we'll be able to have a lot more details. Then the city can decide, is it meet our criteria of some kind of incentive going forward? The applicants made it clear that they expect, hope to get some incentives from the city to attract the right kind of developer. And we've made it clear that we're looking for a certain quality and mix of uses going forward. And so that will give council another opportunity to weigh in on those specifics also.
But what's the leverage that the city had? I mean,
So if they don't ask for incentives, there's no DA.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Is
without
there
that.
a stipulation in the zoning that says this is subject to future development agreements?
No, Mr. Mayor, there's not. But ultimately, to develop a site like this, I mean, we've been very clear from the beginning, we hope to obtain some incentives. That's part of why my client, I think in good faith, went forward and demolished the site to attract that type of user. So we have every intention of coming back with the development.
The applicant asked for a DA
Yes.
on the front end.
Frankly, one is drafted and been
We
discussed.
declined because we didn't have enough specifics. This is all we would be presenting to you for a DA and say, oh, this looks great, let's do a GIPLET. We weren't ready to do that. And they're not ready to do that, right? This positions this property to go out and national, marketing to say, listen, we have this amazing piece of property in Mesa, Arizona that's been entitled. That creates a huge value. And then the city will be willing, and we'll talk with the developer, the actual implementation. Here's if you want reimbursement of construction sales tax, you want a GIPLET, something like that, you're gonna have to earn it, you're gonna have to prove it up, right? You're gonna have to perform to that, and here's what we're gonna expect. This property is also, and you're gonna have this conversation right after this one, is eligible for 2 billboards, right? Well, the billboards require a DA. The DA is gonna require that we see some kind of, something the city wants, right? Highly amenitized streetscapes or quality of development on the architecture. So there's a lot of opportunity. We wanted to give ourselves the flexibility not to have just a blanket incentive and not really have this kind of detail. We wanted to position ourselves so we could be in a point to leverage that when the developer is on board.
So the billboards are not entitled?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a whole separate, just like it's, yeah.
Yeah, and we have a presentation on
Yeah.
the District 2 later, but they're non-titled, so that's a potential. What's the basement on this one? Because I've heard this story before, and it's like, well, if you give us the entitlement, now we can go out. Kind of is the horse pushing the cart or pulling the cart? So, we've heard it where we say, well, if we can just get the entitlements, once you put the entitlements down, we can go out and do something really special. And it just falls down to the baseline of what this is. And it looks like, what was it, 4,000 residential units? I'm assuming those are all apartments, or is there gonna be ownership in there? Do we know what that mix is? Are we requiring a mix? In the 500,000 square foot, thank you, 500,000 square foot of non-residential uses, what's a non-residential use? It's a broad definition, so can you add some specificity to that?
Sure. Mayor, Councilmember Summers, I think what we've really tried to do is learn from some of the other projects that we've had in the past. And that is by requiring these minimum amounts of non-residential as the residential is happening, so it doesn't turn into a residential project with some commercial that kind of juts through the site. And I think that's why when we put the land use budget together the way we did it with these tiers. The non-residential would be anything obviously that's not a place where someone would live, which could be single family, it could be multifamily. We haven't put a specificity on that because I think what will happen is the character of what's being developed on that site will start to drive some of those
That's what we
things.
hope, but at the end of the day, without that, this could be 4,000 apartment units.
No, Councilmember
How-
Summers, it
how-
cannot be 4,000 apartment
That's
units. That
in
is
the-
required in the tiered system, that it be a mix. There's a ratio that's ultimately required.
You can have seven.
I'm confused.
I think he means at the total. When 4,000 are built, they could all be apartments.
Yeah, but you're gonna have how much commercial?
Commercial, right, and that's the
Correct.
idea. Is 4,000 apartments with a 500,000 square feet of commercial
You
a
can't
place
have one
where
without the other.
you would want to live and you would want to interact,
The most you could
right?
have is 700 residential.
Without
Oh,
anything else.
without anything else.
Correct.
But
At
the
700, you
4,000
have,
could, at the end, with the 500,000, could
Right.
be
I see where
I'm
apartments.
just, yeah, I'm just saying.
But they
it's-
all could be
It's the
apartments.
ratio, they have to come together,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
I think that's the beauty, though, of the ID4, is that the focus is on the urban design and the form. And if you get that right, you'll get the kind of community and the kind of end users we're looking for. That's my, correct me if I'm wrong, but that, I mean, it's really focused on the design. Short blocks, open space, frontage on the street. If you get all that right, it'll be a place that people want to be at, and end users certainly want to be at, because people are going to want to go there.
Mayor, Councilmember Grove, you're absolutely right, because you need that density in order to attract some of the retail, some of the restaurants, some of the other non-commercial uses that we want to see, which is why we built that tier system, so that as the residential is built, it can't just be 4,000 units of residential without the commercial. It has to be there to support the residential.
I appreciate the organic growth and where you're going, because we've had this kind of conversation before, and I'd like to see it succeed, but I guess I've just been batted over the head with so many visions that never fully turned out to reality. I don't have my Wrigleyville West. I'm having problems in my own district because the developer is a home builder that does not have a commercial builder attached to it, which is creating some problems. Your client is an amazing business person, but this has not been necessarily their area. They're not a builder or commercial developer, or am I wrong?
No, Mayor, Councilman Summers, you're correct, but nor are we holding ourselves out as the ultimate developer necessarily of this piece. What we were able to do was assemble it, and what we have done here is establish this very unique zoning district that has extensive design guidelines that accomplish the goal that I think Councilmember Goforth set forth very clearly, of having that focus on the public realm, focus on the design, that frankly, I don't think you have anywhere else in Mesa. This is very unique.
Yeah. You know, and then on the other hand, we also have some commercial areas that we got too involved with and turned out to be a flop. I won't name it, but I think we know what it is.
Mayor, Councilmember Summers, what makes this different is two things. We have been working with economic development right from the start. So this has been a strong collaborative effort between economic development, transportation, to really make it materialize. But this is also why we brought in the urban design consultant to ask them, in a project of this size, what are the experiences? How can it be materialized? What do we do from the start to activate? And this was some of the recommendations from the consultants. So they've seen it happening in other parts of the world and recommended this is the tier that will really help.
And Mayor, Councilmember, just to add to what Nana's saying, I think this is a design-based zoning code, and we don't have anything similar in the city at this point. The zoning for this site, which is what the zoning case is about, is the zoning for the site, is all about the design of the site. It's the blocks, it's the building frontages, it's the amount of public open space that's required, it's the land use tiers, so that we're looking at this from a design perspective as opposed to just a land use
So what's the
perspective.
difference between design-based zoning and form-based zoning?
So I'll introduce, this is Angela Wu from Cohn Pedersen Fox. She was the consultant who worked with us. Cohn Pedersen Fox, if you're not familiar with the name, is a highly respected international urban design and planning firm. They've worked all around the world, and so we've been working with Angela and then two of her colleagues out of the New York City office. Angela is out of the San Francisco office. So Angela, do you want to maybe talk to that a little?
Yeah, actually, before I talk about what is the difference between the different forms of planning and zoning, I want to just quickly say that the unique thing about this property is that there is a central open space. So there's something that people are looking forward to, that centers around, that has already a built-in kind of activity and activation to it. Alongside the two, I'll call it the Central Park, if you will, for ease of calling it. Kind of the central green space has commercial on the two sides. And again, it's like, maybe imagine as little pavilions or pop-ups or whatever that kind of allows for lots of activities that helps with the surrounding blocks that are around it. So that's really the activation, and the ability for activation is really kind of central to what this plan is about.
And then I'll start with the difference between a form-based code versus, and I don't want to use form-based, it's really a design-based code. So a traditional zoning code separates land uses, separates.
Euclidean,
It identifies specific, zones where different uses can go, talks about, integrating them, and there's a lot of value in a traditional zoning code. What this does is it says, we're not going to tell you where to put the commercial uses, we'll let the market do that, but if the commercial use goes in a specific place, here's the form it needs to take. Here's how it needs to be set back from the street. Here's what the site needs to be. Here's what the building wall around it needs to be. Here's where your parking needs to be located. So it's not saying specifically a gas station on this corner. It's saying, sorry, that was a bad one. It's not saying a restaurant on this corner. It's saying a restaurant can go on any of those streets that you see highlighted in this form.
And I would tell you it even goes beyond that, because it says in this form, and if it's here, it has to be this tall, and it has to have these type of materials on the outside that have to be integrated. So it goes even beyond the typical form with design.
Right, and that's all part of the form that the business needs to take. And that's really the difference between a more traditional zoning code, which is what we mostly deal with, and a design-based code.
Can I say, the land use regulations that are restricted, are they prohibited, or what do you mean, how restricted? To certain areas, they are prohibited.
These are not allowed uses, sorry.
So you still have that too.
These are not allowed in that area.
A list that you would typically put in a DA, you have here in your zoning district, right?
Great point.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the weeds, but some of these, I wonder if we can actually restrict out, but I'll have a conversation with Jim later
Put them
about
back in?
No.
No, I don't want to put them back in. I'm just wondering if the state law supersedes our ability to, for a couple of these, and I don't want to get into that because that's way too low. But no, these are fine, because obviously, well, let's just say kennels. I don't want 500,000 square feet of kennels. I don't think the market's going to support that anyway. But
that's
to
not our
pull
plan.
them, yeah, I truly want to see. I say this all the time. Agritopia. There's some similarities here, right? There's a single owner who has a passion for a project that wants to move forward. That's the person I want, because they've created such on a much smaller scale, but they've created such a wonderful mix of housing units. There's townhouses, regular homes. I think there's even a little senior living center in there now. But they added that after they did vertically integrated mixed use. It has bars and restaurants. It's a place that a lot of folks in the Southeast Valley go. To see that expanded to an 80-acre and the potential for that, and maybe even to bring in some larger scale entertainment venue to tie into this, to add a flexibility to do that, is really exciting. What worries me is, again, a very successful business person who did a lot of work to acquire this property, because I'm very familiar with that, but they're not a developer. So that makes me a little nervous. Not having a DA at this point, I mean, usually the thing that affords the council and the community itself the most leverage to get something higher quality is a zoning, because once it's zoned, that's it, unless your client comes back and says, I want a DA, I want a change in the zoning, I wanted some kind of an overlay district added to this. That's basically a zoning change. But we're going to entitle this for essentially up to 4,000 residential units. That's a
May-
pretty
may-
big trust.
Mayor, Council, if I can, I think one of the unique things about the ID2 district is it gives us a lot more flexibility than a more normal site plan that you're reviewing and approving with a DA. In the ID district, we were allowed to modify processes, we were allowed to modify and require design guidelines and standards.
Exclude uses.
Exclude uses, which typically we have to do through a DA. So a lot of the things that we would do through a typical DA from a land use perspective have been addressed in the ID2 district because it gives us more flexibility. So those are all
Yeah.
the things that we've looked to modify as part of this zoning district.
Yeah, and of all the zoning projects we've done over the years that I've been here, this is the one I don't think I've ever touched. And this, because it's so rare. And so that also gives me some pause too. Something else I'm very concerned about, and I know your client did a lot of outreach efforts because I'm reading on the numbers, is I'm really disappointed on the apathy of the public input. There's a meeting here that has 5 people.
Mr. Giles, Councilmember Summer, can I actually address that?
Yeah, was there some other input that was received?
I mean, over 2 years, we worked with Tom Bilstein, Bilstein Consulting. We had our own website. We walked door to door to these neighborhoods. We attended their neighborhood meetings. We had our own neighborhood meetings. I mean, I would not describe anyone here as apathetic. I would describe them as very
I'm not referring to you. It's just
No,
how
the
much
community, I would not describe the community as apathetic. I mean,
Okay.
they were very interested in what we were doing here and ultimately very supportive of what we were showing them. I mean,
Okay.
much to our surprise, we had them saying, we want density here. We want these commercial uses.
Yeah, and I hope that's the case because
Yeah.
there's 5 people on a public meeting list, and the submittal document you have for that is only about 24, 25 pages total. So it didn't give me a sense that there was that much input outside of some questions that were asked here.
We also have some additional letters of support that we can turn in, but
Yeah, that'd be great.
we did extensive outreach here.
Okay, but I do see that, I mean, you met with Frank Meisner you met with, and he has a lot of experience with the city. Former council member Dennis Kavanaugh, you met with him on the 6th of November, about a year ago. Some former mayors are mentioned in here as well, so it doesn't.
Dobson Ranch HOA.
Yeah, did you go to that HOA meeting?
We did.
Okay, again, I haven't had a chance to digest this entire document because I got it 2 days ago. And that, kind of, you're probably hearing some of that coming out of me.
Yeah, and remember,
This is-
council members, this is for the December 2nd meeting. We actually.
This is an introduction to.
Yeah, remember, we wouldn't normally be having this, but I didn't want to bring you on Thanksgiving morning to have this discussion. So we're doing this a week ahead of when we would normally have this discussion. So that's, yeah, some of these things are, I don't want to call them late, but in the sequence, they're early. Everything is very early in this process. Evan, the underlying zoning today, if the applicant didn't go through this rezoning, what could they do today?
I'll see.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Mr. Brady.
But how much residential is allowed at that?
So the property is currently zoned LC. You can do a certain amount of residential in the LC district, but there's some parameters on the amount of ground floor commercial that needs to be a component of that, as well as an overall commercial component for the project overall. I believe LC allows up to 25 dwelling units per acre, provided all of the commercial requirements for the ground floor and the overall 60% of the site is commercial. As long as that is met, there is a component of residential that would be allowed by right in the LC district.
So
And
we
Mayor,
would
Council,
be
and-
doubling the number of residential units with this. So the incentive then is we'll double that residential unit, but you have to add the commercial component.
And Mayor, Council, that's correct, Councilmember Summers. And all of these uses on this list would also be allowed.
Yep, also everyone, and there would be no standards for open
That's correct.
space and amenities.
No design guidelines beyond the city's typical.
That's correct.
Probably should have started with that. Made the meeting shorter.
Should have started with that, Evan.
All right, I'm going to have some more questions for staff going through, and I know we're going to have a holiday, and I might be giving you a call too, just to get more comfortable, but I'm fine with the introduction on the second.
Great.
Really quick.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
I think I've said this before, you know, when I came to council almost 8 years ago, this was one of my first meetings. Back then it was like 5 owners, you know, Sears owned their property, Dillard's, Mr. Garcia. There's another local owner here. And so it was definitely struggle to get anywhere. And then luckily, you know, Mr. Garcia and Verde Message was able to consolidate all this. And then from the beginning, I think it's been a conversation with Dobson Ranch HOA and the stakeholders around it, the businesses, the Grace property up on the north side, right? And multiple stakeholders there. I think it's been definitely a heavy topic, a conversation within the area here. And I think as we see some resurgence in that area, I think just this property itself it's the catalyst, right? To see even further growth. You know, you have kind of a distressed, shopping strip mall on Longmore. You got a Target on Longmore and Southern that people go to, but there's areas there. You got the other side of Alma School. You know, it's been vacant pretty much where Feed My Starving Children's at. Now they left. So that's almost 30 acres of vacant office space. And then you got other kind of drive-throughs around it. So I think the foundation of building something great. I agree with Councilmember Summers' kind of trepidation on like what's gonna happen, right? That's all of our concerns, I'll be honest. That's everybody around here. Like what's happening here, right? Like what's gonna happen? And I think that's this structure. I think gives us the opportunity to lay that foundation, and then make sure we hold people to the fire, right? As far as the type of development. And I think this gives us a great start, but definitely more to come as far as what we can build in this 80-acre site that's so important for the West Mesa community. I think and I think the applicant knows how important this site means for the surrounding community here, and that's been expressed multiple times, and we'll keep on making sure that's a concern, that we cannot have just residential or just the normal developments that we've seen in the past, but it's got to be a great feature for West Mesa, but the region, right? Because of the significance that Fiesta Mall played in the past here. I think we got to see that in the name itself, Fiesta redefined, right? Like how that brings to life what can be envisioned there. So I think I'll just leave it there. And I think that's, this is a starting point, but I agree with my colleagues that this has to be a site that we can all point to in the region as a center of opportunities in placemaking and really be a top-notch for our city, right? So,
and Mayor and Councilmember Heredia, I think one of the things we learned, one of the things that is important for us is we have a local ownership. He's not coming from somewhere else. He owns his property. He assembled it. He spent the money ahead of time to demolish this without knowing what was going to happen. And the most important thing is he really does have ties to this property, because I think he told us he met his wife at Dillard's here. So I think he wants to do, so it's a family story here. So thank you.
That's great.
I'm sorry, I have
Yes,
one more
please,
question.
sure.
I know we're all probably done with this, but how does it work? Because I know he's not a developer, so he's going to sell this off in pieces, right? And how does that work with the ID too?
So, Mayor,
necessarily?
Councilman Goforth, he is actually a developer. We do have other projects that we
okay.
have done for him, such as the Carvana campus. He just may or may not be the one that ultimately develops this site.
Oh.
I think the goal, not only does he have ties to it, he's also fairly patient. So I think the goal is to find someone who's going to come in and redevelop all of it.
Oh, take it as a whole, not
Or
necessarily.
partner with him or something like that.
Involved.
He wants to be involved. There is certainly the possibility that someone could come in and take down phases, but they would be obligated to meet all the requirements under the zoning district, design guidelines, continuity, connections, pedestrian connections, vehicular. Everything sort of ties this together in a way that you don't have, again, anywhere else in Mesa today.
I know, yeah, even if it gets subdivided, those parcels still are, yes, connected in a way that your normal zoning districts are not. You can do it in a
Correct.
vacuum
That's the
almost,
benefit of
whereas
doing such a
here,
large
yeah,
70 acres at one
okay.
time.
I think that's what we probably should have started with and maybe didn't articulate clearly enough. I mean, that's what's so unique about this.
Thank you. Great discussion. This is, we've got a lot more on our agenda, so we'll continue this, but I'll just make the observation as I leave at the end of 10 years that this has been on, one of the most frequently asked questions I've received over the last 10 years, and the problem before this always was the mixed ownership.
Yes.
And now we're at a very desirable location because now the ownership is the big advantage here. The fact that we've got someone who has the ability to be patient and does not have extreme financial pressures to do something quickly, that's what's going to allow this to become something very special. And so the lack of the development agreement, I understand that's a little different, but again, that's at our request. The applicant would love to have a fully baked development
Yes, I
agreement.
would.
But that's what gives us this ongoing, finger in the mix here. And there's no question that GPLED and billboards and all these other things this is not going to happen without that. And so we're along for the ride, which I think is great. But obviously a lot of significant work has gone into this to this point, and I'm very grateful for that and looking forward to moving this forward so we can continue the great work that's been done on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Let's just slide, if you don't mind, move the slide to the west of this property and do the
Well,
billboard.
yes, so if you don't mind, we do have, and I appreciate Dr. Daniel being here from Mesa Community College. One of our agenda items is to talk about the Mesa College Promise Program. Thank you for your patience in staying with us, Dr. Daniel. Why don't, if you don't mind, let's skip to agenda item 2B.
Well, it's 2B and it's also 6D on your regular agenda. So yes,
Right.
let's do,
Okay.
we can do both of them at the same time, yeah.
Yeah, so on our Monday agenda is the approval of this item, and it's also agendized as a presentation for our study session. So welcome, ladies.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Sarah Toller. I am the Administrator for the Education and Workforce Office, and I am joined here by Mary Kopowski-Brown. We are going to this morning provide an update on the Mesa College Promise Program, and then Mary is going to present on the district's application for the Billboard Overlay District. I also want to acknowledge our partners before we get started here from Mesa Community College, from Maricopa County Community College District, as well as the foundation. Dr. Richard Danielle, president of MCC, who has been instrumental in moving this project forward, as well as Brian Spicker, the president and CEO of the foundation, and Leanne Bond, the chief operating officer for Maricopa County Community College District. So thank you for your partnership in this project and understanding and walking along with us on such an impactful program. All right, so I wanted to start this morning by providing just a brief background on the development of the Mesa College Promise Program and why, as a city, we're so invested in this. In 2016, the city of Mesa joined the state of Arizona in a commitment to support the Achieve 60 AZ initiative, which is a goal that was developed to have 60% of the adults in Arizona earn a post-secondary degree, certificate, or professional license. And so as part of that commitment, the city has worked to develop strategies to help move the needle in the city of Mesa. In 2021, the mayor formed the Mesa Achieves Higher Education Task Force to bring together council members, representatives from higher education and our community to really understand the landscape of higher education and to develop specific strategies and initiatives that from a city perspective we can do to help support the Achieve 60 AZ goal. And so from that task force, the recommendation was made to develop the Mesa College Promise Program. In 2021, the mayor also implemented the Mesa Education Workforce Development Roundtable, and the purpose of this advisory council is really to institutionalize the work that was started by that task force, but to bring all of the representatives involved in education and workforce development and community leadership around the same table to understand education and our needs in the city of Mesa and really work together to align goals and resources and support that recommendation of the development of the Mesa College Promise Program. And all of this work is being done to support the city council's strategic priority of a skilled and talented workforce. And so that is that commitment to our residents that they have access to higher education, training, reskilling, upskilling opportunities, as well as our commitment to our current businesses and our future businesses that we as a city will be able to supply an educated and qualified workforce. And so, as I mentioned, the Mesa College Promise Program was established and launched in 2021. It is a partnership between, as I mentioned, the City of Mesa, Maricopa Community College District, as well as Maricopa Community College District Foundation, and a commitment to our residents that eligible residents have access to attend MCC tuition-free for 2 years. When the program was first established in 2021, the focus was on those recent high school graduates, so students who had just graduated within the first 3 years of high school, going straight to MCC. As you remember, earlier this year, we were able to expand the program to include adult learners. So now the program is open to City of Mesa residents who have not yet earned a degree can apply, and those eligible will be able to attend MCC. I just wanted to touch on the funding structure of this program. The Mesa College Promise Program is a last dollar program, which means that applicants have to complete the FAFSA, and then any federal funding, scholarships, grants that they receive from the FAFSA completion will first be applied, and then the funding from Mesa College Promise will then make up the difference. And right now, the program is funded from 2 different funding sources. One of them is the city's annual $100,000 contribution, and the other is private donations from businesses. And those fundraising efforts are led by Mayor Giles in partnership with the Philanthropy Office at MCC and the foundation.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself,
No,
but
please.
we're here for the billboard, so I assume where is that in the funding?
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Go forth. I am just updating on the Mesa College Promise Program,
Okay.
and then Mary will go
You'll talk
into
about
the
that.
billboards. Yes. Just to review the eligibility requirements for the program, the students have to be a City of Mesa resident, have graduated from high school or earned a GED, not previously earned a degree from an accredited college or university, and then completed the FAFSA. Eligible or participants that are enrolled in the program will then receive 2 years of free tuition at MCC, as well as a stipend each semester, a $250 stipend to apply to any expenses additional expenses that they have. And what really sets the program apart from just a scholarship program is the additional academic and social service benefits that students are provided with this program. So they are assigned an academic advisor, they have access to tutoring and counseling, they participate in volunteer opportunities like the Mesa Marathon, the Point in Time Count, and then they're enrolled in the I Belong iPad program. Just wanted to give you a high-level overview of the current makeup of the program. So you can see what the enrollment trajectory looks like from when the program was established in 2021 to where it is now, has over tripled. And that blue circle represents the adult learners who had the opportunity to apply this most recent cohort, and we currently have 54 adult learners. There are over 300 Mesa College Promise Scholars in this most recent cohort and about 415 total students in the program who are finishing up from previous years. And then this just gives you an idea of who is being served in this program. You can see that almost 70% of the students are first generation, which means that they are the first in their family to enroll in higher ed. Over 60% of the students in the program are Hispanic and over 60% female. This map gives you an idea of where in the city of Mesa they are coming from. So you can see that the most concentrated zip code is 85204, which I think really aligns with the need. But you can see that, you know, there is equitable distribution across the city, that there are Mesa Promised scholars from all parts of the city. There are students from all 6 of our Mesa Public Schools high schools who are enrolled in the program. The highest enrollment comes from Mesa High School, and then after that Skyline, but Desert Ridge, Eastmark, and Higley all have students who are enrolled in the program as well. While enrollment is obviously really important and the first step, what is really going to move the needle for our city is completion and degrees and certificates. And so you can see some of the outcomes. The average cohort GPA is really a reflection of those wraparound academic supports and services that students are provided. As well as below that, you can see the degree and certificates to date that students in this program have received. And you can see that there are multiple students who have earned multiple certificates or degrees in their time in the program. And clearly this program has made an impact in our community, but I also wanted to highlight the statewide and national impact that the program has made. It has garnered national attention, both from the U.S. Department of Education and the White House. Dr. Biden has come to visit the program twice, to the first time to, you know, just highlight the importance of community college and how our unique program from the municipal perspective is working to find solutions and financially fund a program like this. From that first visit, it garnered national media attention, and this is an article from Teen Vogue that highlighted one of our Mesa College Promise scholars and her journey and how it inspired her father to also enroll in the program. Dr. Biden came back to speak at the MCC graduation ceremony this most recent year. And just last week, Mayor Giles was asked to speak at the U.S. Department of Education on a panel highlighting College Promise programs and speak from the city perspective because what we're doing is so unique. And then from the state and regional perspective, there are multiple cities, Phoenix and Tempe, have either developed or are currently developing Promise programs using the model that we have created, and the Maricopa County Community College District is currently working on developing a district-wide Promise model to benefit all 10 colleges. So clearly, we can see that this program has proven success, but we are still faced with challenges, which is what brings us here today, that we really need to work towards finding a long-term solution for some of these challenges. And just wanted to touch on a few of them. Maintaining a pipeline of sustainable funding. It's important, you know, we are right now reliant on the city's contribution as well as fundraising. And this year, with enrollment, we reached kind of the threshold for number of students that we could support with the current funding. So it's really important to have that long-term solution for sustainable funding so that we can talk about expansion opportunities, so we can talk about what that looks like to bring in as many City of Mesa residents as possible, expanding opportunities for them to you know, potentially seek out other programs at other community colleges within the district with this type of funding, We also want to ensure that we can be an active partner in workforce development and strengthening and sustaining those partnerships, as well as being able to act on further collaboration opportunities with both MCC and the district. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to Mary to address the zoning considerations.
Thank you, Sarah. Mayor, council members, as Sarah had indicated, what the billboards are looking to do is to provide that kind of long-term funding stream for the Mesa College Promise. And so we have received a request for the billboard overlay. It is a zoning request that is on your December 2nd agenda. And so I just wanted to summarize what the request was and then how that is working in with the program. So what they have requested is to allow 2 electronic billboards on site, and you can see from the site plan where they're located. The first one is just west of the MCC Performing Arts Building, and then the second one is 1,000 feet west of that. And you'll remember about a month ago, we came in with a couple of modifications to the billboard ordinance where we had found some things that we could do to maybe make this a little bit more equitable across the city, in that because of that exit ramp right by MCC, the 1,200 feet would have made that billboard challenging to put in there if they didn't go higher. So we worked with the city, with the applicant to kind of look at what those impacts would be. The next slide. So this is the proposed billboard elevation that they're proposing. You can see they've got the Mesa Community College on the pole of that billboard. It is a 60-foot tall billboard, which meets the zoning requirements. It is a double-faced V-frame billboard that is 48 square feet on each sign face. Again, it meets all of the requirements of the zoning code. One of the biggest concerns about billboards is the light, the distraction, and the potential impacts on drivers. So what we've done is in our code, we have identified specific details as it relates to the messaging and how light the billboard can be and how often billboard messaging can change. So the messages can be displayed, but they can't exceed 300 nits from sunset to 11 p.m. So at sunset, they have to start to dim. And at 11 p.m., they're turned off. So there'll be no light. We want to make sure we're protecting the night sky here in Mesa. The applicant also did conduct a lighting study, and you'll see there's these concentric circles in the graphic to the right. You'll see that none of the yellow pieces of those concentric circles are impacting the residents to the south of 60. The residents to the south of 60, those properties actually sit lower than 60, and then there's a large retaining wall that is adjacent to 60, and then 60, and then the MCC site. So that graphic shows that none of that light from those billboards would spill into that residential neighborhood.
Excuse me, Mary. Julie.
I have a question on that. I understand how line of sight ones are done. I guess I've never actually seen how a lighting one is done. Do they use actual lights, and this is the measuring of the actual lights, or this is like a computer generated, this is how much light would come from it?
I might ask the applicant.
I'm not familiar with
to
how a
answer
lighting
that,
impact
but
is done.
It's AI.
Well, that's what I was wondering if it's.
I'm sure it's modeled. Councilmember Spilsbury?
Come on.
Yeah, come here, Reese.
Good morning, everyone. Happy
Mr.
Thanksgiving to
Anderson,
all of
sorry.
you. Yeah, Reese Anderson with Pew and Lake, 1744 South El Vista. So this is a computer-generated model based off of a lot of experience with this exact technology, where they put in louvers, just like your privacy screen on your cell phone, where you can't see from the side. That's how this technology works, and that's why as you go out in those graphs, that become lighter yellow, because it's measuring nits, which is a new term that I learned, right? The three definition of nits, it's the eggs of lice.
I know, I'm like, that's not a good word.
It's slang, English slang for a not very smart person. And now I've learned that it's a measurement of one candle of light in a square meter. So when you look at, a foot candle, right, is what us in America would call, but internationally a nit, it's a square meter.
Okay.
And so when you look at the chart, and we have that in the file now, so we can throw it up, you're at less than 1 foot candle at the closest to the neighbor. So it's a very low, it's much less than the existing lights that exists on the freeway there.
So
It's a computer-generated model based off of their vast experience.
my only concern with this the whole time has been the impact to the neighbors, and so I know we're doing everything to make sure. So if for some reason there was a problem with the computer-generated model of this, and there was some extra light in backyards that became a problem, like, is there something we could do at that point?
I think you could dim it, because I think that technology exists, but so yes, I think it could be done. The good news is that what Mary described, the screen wall, and I know Mary's staff has the photos, we have too. If you're standing in those backyards.
Yeah, I'm not
you
worried about the
cannot
line
see.
of sight, because I get that. So light though, like can obviously come over a line of sight. So that's why
Yeah,
I'm
but it's
just.
the distance and the height of those walls in their backyard.
So.
Mary, are you about to show us the picture of the
We do have some
wall?
images. Sarah's just gonna find them. I think it's hidden in the presentation at the last
I just,
slide, if you unhide.
I know like the lights at like some of the high school football fields or the pools cause a lot of issues with neighbors in their backyards and in their windows at night when they're trying to sleep. So like, I just want to be very, very careful and cautious that we're not doing anything. And I've seen all these pictures, like, again, I get the line of sight, but because we didn't try it with an actual light and we're just going off of a computer generated model, which I get, but I just want to make sure that if for some reason these studies aren't exactly correct, that we're not going to do any harm to our neighbors.
So Mayor, Council Member Goforth, what we did require, and this was also put into the amendment that we just did, was that they had to do that line of sight study to show that the billboard itself could not be seen from 500 feet away. So they went out and they actually modeled and showed through the line of sight from 500 feet away that even the top of the billboard could not be seen.
And the reason why we
from that
can't see
distance.
anything in these pictures is because we can't see anything in these pictures.
Because of
right?
the walls. That's
I mean,
correct.
This
That's
is
correct.
proving that you cannot see
That's
anything.
correct.
So I totally get that, but you can see it's the middle of the day when these pictures were taken. So again, having a really bright billboard at night that's coming in your back window or something is incredibly problematic. So I just want to make sure.
And Mayor, Council members, there are some examples of this technology in the valley, and we can forward those to you through the planning staff if you'd like to be able to see it. The one that's Becker Billboards has told me about is in Gilbert, so it's not far from us.
Okay,
If you'd like to see it.
but you feel confident that if for some reason something was still too bright, that we could probably, hopefully,
Absolutely.
most likely,
Dim
do
them more.
something about it? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Freeman.
Reese, before you leave.
Oh, yes.
You know, time of day is everything. So in the wintertime, we get dark earlier. And the lights,
That's
you know,
correct.
this is turned off at 11 PM. And most people, you know, if they choose to go bed early because of time and season, is there a chance to change that from 11 PM to lower it down to a lower number? I don't know. I'm just asking the question because people don't want to be disrupted in their sleep because of lights.
Yep.
And that's a very sensitive subject,
So Mayor, Councilmember Freeman, there's actually two pieces of it. It has to dim at sunset, so if it's 6 o'clock and it's dark, the billboard has to dim, and then it does still go off at 11. But at sunset, no matter what time of year, if it's 6 o'clock or if it's 8 o'clock, that it has to dim down to that 300 nits.
Okay, so I guess I'll have to go to Gilbert to see that.
Well, I'm happy to forward it on to you to see, but, no, but, Mr. Freeman, there's always an opportunity to come back and revisit, right? We know that. And what you have here with the district is a willing cooperative partner, and we're engaging this together, right? And I always say everyone has a rookie season, and we're in our rookie season here. Why was 11 o'clock chosen? That's part of the standard that Mesa has. It's kind of a universally, nationally standard that everyone's adopted. And so Mesa's ordinance complies with those national standards. We're complying with the national standards. But if we're finding that doesn't work, I think with the partners sitting right behind, you would just open the conversation up again and have that conversation with them. But for now, we're starting with those nationally accepted standards.
The best
and moving
practices.
forward, yes.
Is that a Mesa standard that we have? Yeah.
Councilmember Freeman, we actually did a lot of research on this both locally and nationally, and these are really national standards that are being used for billboards.
Okay.
We really are fortunate that the closest residential is across from the 60, and they have those sound walls. And you stand on the sidewalk or in the street, the angle above it.
Well, they're on berms too. The
Right,
sound
and I'm
walls
just
are
saying,
on
when you're,
berms, and then
it looks a
20
lot
foot of
taller in the
masonry.
backyard than it does from when you're
From
driving
60.
on the freeway. It's
That's correct.
significantly taller.
For those of us that have walked it, and I've walked down that alley and took photos of myself, just to give you perspective, the tower with the lattice is 200 feet tall to the top of the lattice and 212 to the top of the antenna. And when you're standing there in the backyards of folks that live across the 60, you cannot see that at all.
And the billboard, and just to clarify, the billboards are 60 feet.
60, yes. No one, anyone watching at home to think that a billboard's
So
going to be 200.
less than half the
I'm
height of
talking
that
about-
tower.
I'm sorry, what tower are you
There's a radio tower that's part of the campus there, and if you were to go over there, we pulled the approved plans for that, and 200 to the lattice, 212 to the top of the tip.
And you can't see that.
Oh, no, you can't see, and if you want, I'd plug in my thumb drive and show you the pictures, but
Yes, I would like you to do that.
I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to. Yeah, and the Performing Arts Center, just for your context, is 55.9. So it's a very similar height to what the billboards are. So yes, just like anything, as I step further away and go further south, it becomes visible. But I'm so far away, it's not an impact. But again, using those standards of the planning staff, et cetera, when I'm close, there's no impact. You're gonna get more light bleed from the existing lights in the center of the freeway than you are from this sign.
Mr. Summers?
Yeah, I did a little Google search on this and I see what you're coming up with. So were you saying the height of the billboards are what?
60.
60 compare, and then the tower is?
200, just pick 200.
200, so a little taller. And then what are the lights in the middle of the freeway?
So I've tried to track that down, and I don't have a direct answer for you, but what I can tell you is, from my personal experience of walking the neighborhood, et cetera, those are gonna be more visible than the billboards on the other side. But I've tried to track it down. They're pretty tall, I'm gonna guess, 80 to 90, but they're in the middle of the freeway.
So this is on Isleta is where I'm at, just
Yes, right,
looking
that's-
to the north.
Yep.
And I believe you said roughly that the background ambient light currently is like 1 to 1.5 nits?
No, what I referred to was the light, so in the light chart
Yeah.
that our consultants provided from Becker Billboards, I'm saying that is less than 1 nit as you get closest to the neighbors. The
So
ambient light, I have not measured.
That'd be the only thing, if this isn't gonna add any more light beyond the ambient,
It's not,
Then it
because
would be an
the
issue.
study that we provided was what this billboard provides. It's not what's above ambient.
okay, yeah, because I can see those, just looking in front of this address on the street, I can see the lights of the freeway sticking up fairly considerably, so they're getting that light too. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mary, is there more to your presentation?
That, Mayor, those are the ends of my slides, but I think Sarah has a couple of more slides to go through.
Okay, thank you.
And I am just going to conclude by touching on the IGA and development agreement that is part of the rezoning application. And so, again, want to thank the district and the foundation for their partnership in creating this, very unique project to benefit the Mesa College Promise program. And so I wanted to just highlight the main points that create the structure of this agreement. So it establishes a formal partnership between the city, the district, and the foundation. It establishes that the gross revenue to support operational and district student costs specific to the Mesa College Promise program. So the revenue from the billboards will be directed to costs specific to the Mesa College Promise program in perpetuity. And in conversations with the district and the foundation and the vendor, the estimated revenue is between $350,000 and $400,000 annually for the first 10 years, and hopefully to grow after that. Another way to think about it is that it was brought up that it's equivalent to the district receiving a $10 million endowment and being able to use those funds to support the program. So it is, a really substantial additional funding source for the Mesa College Promise program. This development agreement will be paired with a programmatic agreement, which will outline program operations, prioritization of funding distribution, and revenue streams. So there is currently a programmatic agreement in place for the Mesa College Promise program, and so it will be updated to include, this additional revenue source. That program agreement has a 5-year term, and it's meant to be updated every 5 years to be able to evolve with the program. It also outlines the city billboard use, which is defined as having access to an 8-second spot every 64 seconds, which can advertise city services, businesses, programs, events, facilities, etc., as well as access for public service announcement space and emergency announcement space. And this agreement has a term of 99 years or the life of the billboard, whichever is longer. And I also wanted to mention another benefit in conversation with the vendor, which is Becker Boards. The foundation is currently working on finalizing an additional contribution that Becker is committed to, which is a separate endowment gift to support Native American students at Mesa College, or at Mesa Community College. So this will be separate from the Mesa College Promise Program, but as a Native-owned business, Becker was committed to contributing. So this is just an additional benefit to MCC through this program. And with that, I will take any additional questions. I did want to mention that we included in your council packet a supplemental document that includes thank you notes from students. And you can kind of see the impact of this program, but I hope that you have an opportunity to read through them because their voice and their experience really is what communicates why we are doing this, because it's an impactful program and it changes lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Thank you, Sarah and Mary. This has been a long haul project, but we think it's one of a milestone project for Mesa. We appreciate the partnership with MCC. We really appreciate the enthusiasm by the staff, and especially Dr. Daniel coming on has really kind of made us feel like we could actually get this done. We've always talked about having a qualified workforce. That is the greatest economic tool incentive we can have with any major developer. They don't ask about utilities. They don't ask about land availability first. They ask about, and it's the #1 topic for businesses today to relocate is, you know, do you have the available workforce? Do you have the skilled workforce that can meet our demands? And when the mayor and I have luncheons or breakfasts with CEOs, that's their #1 issue, is filling positions. We think this is an important pipeline. Frankly, my goal would be to not only fill in all those who are eligible, but I would hope that every Mesa High, how can I say this? Every student who graduates from high school in Mesa would have an opportunity to receive an education regardless of income, right? To make it so easy, right, for them to come and get an education. And so we're really appreciate that we have MCC to be a partner in doing that. And I think creating this unique opportunity, I know it's billboards, none of us are big fans of billboards, but I think we've done it in a way to be very respectful of the surrounding neighborhoods, but it is a significant source. I'm always amazed by the significant source of income it is. And to take that and put it back into the community and to provide these unique opportunities to help our community grow and provide opportunities. And I'm hoping that over time, as this grows and we find ways that we can be not only successful in getting them into the College Promise, but successfully employed in Mesa. And I would hope that that would be something we could do for every Mesa student that graduates in Mesa. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie.
I feel like I'm gonna cry because everything makes me cry. But of course, education, I'm really grateful that we have a community that values this. I'm sorry. Whew. My son-in-law is currently enrolled in this, as I've been saying, and it's a huge blessing to him and my daughter. So, because I've been a part of this so closely for the last 3 years, it's just been incredible to meet the kids that are part of it and the mentors and staff that are supporting it. And it's incredible, and to think that we could expand it to every student is really incredible. Our Mesa Public Schools, as well as Gilbert, Higley, and Queen Creek, are all they're really beefing up their workforce development. type of programs and partnerships with our local community. And so to see the way that that is being beefed up, that then continues into so many incredible opportunities that Mesa Community College already has, partnering with businesses so that these kids just seamlessly slip into their careers. And their whole world changes when they have these opportunities, and then it's affecting generations. So I think it's incredible. I am so glad that the mayor especially, gosh, has made this a priority of his. I think we owe him a lot that these programs are even exist. So anyways, my question is just, so the current funding structure, is that continuing? Like if we approve this, we still are doing the $100,000 commitment from the city and
This is
100,000 from
supplemental to
philanthropy?
everything. We
Yeah.
want to go bigger and
Just
better.
go bigger.
And, yeah, absolutely.
So your 350 to 400,000 is expected per year, is what you said?
Is the estimated projection at this point, yes.
Okay, so we could expand that quite a bit. So I'm curious, with the Maricopa County Promise being developed, how does that, I think, do some of the other community colleges have a Promise program? I'm just curious how then will that, like MCC obviously, yeah, I don't know who wants to speak to that. I'm just curious what that looks like if Mesa Community College, and I think some others already have current Promise programs, then what will that look like?
Good morning. Brian Spicker, President and CEO of the Maricopa Community Colleges Foundation, where we make dreams come true through making post-secondary education accessible and affordable, as well as certifications. So thank you, Mayor and Council Member Spilsbury. The Maricopa Promise, the Promise idea has been very front and center to Maricopa Community College District and the 10 colleges. It was the mayor's leadership to actually attempt this that really has led to a model that we're looking at rolling out district-wide. In fact, Phoenix, the city of Phoenix, pretty much adopted the similar model and expanded it with using some federal funds to the extent of $5 million, where thousands of students have moved through being Phoenix residents into any one of the 10 colleges of which Mesa was participating, the Mesa Community College participated. So we really want to see a sustainable approach. Those federal funds are ending, and we want to make sure students continue because the persistence and completion rate is significant as compared to other students going in because of that last dollar in, that stipend, and the student support effort. So Maricopa is, it's part of our strategic plan to have a College Promise Maricopa. Mesa would be a part of that, and we would like to see all students that need financial support to have access to a high-quality education or access to workforce and industry certification.
So in each of those different community college, I don't know, what do you call them, areas or whatever, do the cities, I mean, is that the goal to have like each city then support it the way Mesa's doing it?
Thank you for that, Councilmember Spilsbury. We're building a funders collaborative.
Okay.
And so it would be regional, it'll be Maricopa County focused, where we would have cities, philanthropic partners, foundations, and industry partners who are actually contributing and governing, so to speak, the outputs and the outcomes that come from such a Promise program.
And I guess maybe why I'm asking is the billboard, potential money from the billboards is gonna stick with Mesa Community College and stay with Mesa Community College.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
This is
Not that I don't care about all the kids
No,
in
no,
the
no.
whole valley.
It's such a novel idea.
Yeah.
Our hope is that we could look at this model with some other cities in terms of moving their Promise efforts forward, because it's unique to a city. That doesn't mean other industries like the mayor and Mesa Community Colleges have funded your current effort. It'll be in addition to,
Okay,
so.
great, thank you so much.
Just to follow up to that, so when it'll stay, and I agree, it's not that I don't care about other students around the valley, but those dollars will continue to support Mesa residents at Mesa Community College. Okay.
Absolutely.
And then the gross revenue to support operational, what percentage of the total gross revenue will it be?
Yeah, it'll be a 70%, 30, those are the thresholds. If the operational is less, it'll be a higher, going to the student supports and student stipends. We don't know that, we've got some work to do in terms of understanding, but that is, you know, the programmatic supports are the operational costs. So as you've seen, the Mesa Community Colleges provides a support to those students so they get across the finish line. So that's what the operational costs are.
In addition to what they pay for tuition, in addition to what the foundation pays for tuition, you're saying? So but isn't that what the point of your tuition is, right? To cover those programmatic and operational costs?
This is a much more, this program, the Promise program, provides a higher level of student supports than what you would see with any student just enrolling and paying tuition. Because this is a higher need student, and if Dr. Daniels wants to add to that, but it's a critical piece.
I guess what it comes down to, I just want to understand what is the percentage that goes to the foundation that is used for the students to cover the tuition?
So taking
and what
the
is going
gross,
straight
the
to-
gross amount,
Okay.
right? There's a gross amount. There's a portion that goes back to the MCC for the overhead administration.
Yes, it's a 2%, and then 2%, we have a 2% new gift fee and a 2%, and that helps us operate as a foundation.
And then,
So
go
it's
ahead,
de
and then
minimis.
Sarah, talk about the
I'll
dollars.
add that that is part of the 30%. That is not on top of the 30% operational.
But Sarah, the money that's coming to the city, or going for the benefit of the Promise program, I mean, it's tuition, it can be
The
support.
stipend, students receive a stipend each semester.
Is there any other administrative counselors or anything else that's used for?
Yeah, counselors and academic advisors, and Dr.
Correct.
Danielle, you can also speak to that.
So, good morning, Mayor, council members. I'm Richard Benyon, the president of Mesa Community College. It's really an opportunity to look at how do we broaden this holistic support for students. As Sarah was talking about and Brian, is that it's beyond just the regular service. So when a student pays tuition and fees, they have access to services. This is beyond, this is an assigned person, someone who's tracking them, people that actually help recruit them in the high schools, people who help them out in the workforce, because we've added the additional piece on the adult learner now coming back. So we have more investments in trying to make sure that the Mesa Promise program is successful. And if we are able to do what City Manager Brady talks about, is giving every person in Mesa an opportunity, that's going to be a game changer in terms of the opportunity. When we talked last week when we were in DC, Mayor Giles talked about the percentage of those people who did not have a college credential in Mesa and what he would like it to be, where the city has set goals. To do that, we have to work very, very collectively and collaboratively to get there. I was with Education Forward Arizona for many years, and when they started the Achieve 60 AZ goal, so I know the importance of an educated populace as we bring people to Arizona, people to the city of Mesa. So this just helps us get there with support services to ensure that students don't fall through the cracks, that students are completing. One of the biggest challenges we have in community colleges is that students have an intent to complete, but they don't always complete. So we want to make sure we have those services so they can complete. And that's one of the things that's important as part of the other services, that we've attached some additional resources to do that.
And I'll just add that, thank you for mentioning this, that through the Mesa College Promise program, there is an on-campus advisor at all 6 of the Mesa public high schools. So there is an MCC person who works on that campus and works with students on what that process is to transition them to MCC.
Okay, and I understand that, and that's great, but the breakdown was, important, and you're saying it's about 70-30, 30 going to the operational and direct costs, 70 going to, I don't know if does it go to the foundation? Does it not necessarily have to? It does. It goes directly to the foundation.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then the foundation reimburses Mesa Community College for those costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And other questions, council? So again, Mr. Brady, this is item 60 on our
For introduction, yes.
Okay.
It was posted both so we could give the background of Mesa Community College in your study session, but it also is the item on your agenda for December 2nd.
Great.
6D.
All right. Well, thank you. I can't not say something about this, obviously. I think we in this room have two jobs. One is to talk about the success of our community, and we're very good at that. And we attract, Apple and Google and Meta, and everyone comes to Mesa because we're great at talking, giving the Chamber of Commerce story. The other job we have is to fix things that are less than perfect, or to get better at things. And one of the things, I'm very proud of Mesa, but one of the things that we have to get better at is post-high school educational attainment. We do not compare favorably to our neighbors or nationally, and that is a weakness that we have. So I think we need to own that and try to figure out how to get better at that. As I've looked at that, to me, the best tool that we have to fix that weakness that we have is Mesa Community College. So that's where that was kind of the motivation behind figuring out how to get more of our kids that just aren't going post-high school enrolled. So I'm pleased that over the last 3 or 4 years, we've proven this concept up. It has been successful, but we continue to, we need to increase utilization. We don't want this to be a program that is impacting the lives of hundreds of students. We want it to impact the lives of thousands of students. And as I have visited the MCC campus and I look around at the student body, I can tell nearly all of them could and should qualify for the Mesa College Promise. So, but we don't have the resources now to expand the program. So we need to figure out how to do that. And I think this is a very innovative way. Potentially, it could be the game changer that creates the environment that Mr. Brady said that we aspire to, which is if you're a Mesa high school graduate, the assumption is that Mesa Community College is going to enroll you and you're going to be covered by the Mesa College Promise. It is a needs-based program, so it's not going to, it doesn't impact kids who don't need it, but it has the potential to have a dramatic impact on addressing one of the real things that as a community we need to get better at. So I'm fully in support of it and appreciate the hard work that's gone into getting this onto our agenda. Ms. Duff.
I'll just build off of that. One of the things that is wonderful about this is the biggest problem in our society right now is the cost of living, right? Rents and groceries and things like that. And it is breaking people and families, and it is the #1 stressor. This is what we can do. We can't control the costs and the inflation. We cannot do that. But if we give this opportunity for people to have careers instead of just jobs, but careers that they can, build upon, this is what we can do to really help people in a real way, is giving them a better options and a better quality of life instead of just hanging on for dear life in these expenses, and a more fulfilling life to have a career instead of just doing a job because it's making X amount. And I think our partnership with MCC has been a wonderful partner, not only with the city, but also with the employers. There's so many employers that I know that have worked with MCC to design programs for the students coming out there, have the credentials, the training, so they go into the job immediately at good, very good pay. And I think that in itself is an economic development tool. When we talk to employers and saying, what kind of skills do you need? What kind of training, what kind of education do you need? That we have a community college that can partner with you to design a program to make sure those students that are coming out are exactly qualified for this industry. And I think that's a tremendous benefit that we can tout in Mesa. So thank you for all your work on that. Sarah and your team, I know a few of our council members are on the workforce and education. Yeah, and the mayor for his leadership and started all this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else on this? Thank you. Dr. Daniel, I know you you probably missed a few appointments this morning, and we appreciate you.
No worries. This
Thank
is
you very
important
much.
to us. We really appreciate the partnership. Thank you. Mayor.
And thank you for your.
I don't know that we've ever publicly welcomed you to our community. We're excited that you are is it, how long have you been the president?
4 months.
4 months. Thank you. Well, we're fortunate to have you, and look, I hope you know that I've shared this with you. You play a very critical role in our community, and I want you to know you've got a lot of friends and a lot of support.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the welcome you've all provided me. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you. All right, thank you. Kimber, thank you for your patience. We'd like now to move on to agenda item 2A. Item 2A is a presentation on small businesses and their role in building thriving economies and a unique sense of place. Thank you, ladies, for your patience with us this morning. Council, are you okay moving forward without a break?
I think they're taking breaks regardless.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm sorry, you know what, let's take a 5-minute break. Now that we have it, while you set up your computer, we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 9:30, okay? Thank you. All right, thank you again for your patience this morning. We did have a lot to discuss, but none is more important than item 2B, which is a presentation, 2A is a presentation on small business and their role in building lives, building thriving economies and a unique sense of place. I love whoever wrote the agenda item. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, welcome.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you so much for your time today. This is informational only, based on 25 years of working in developing communities. Many of you may not know, my name is Kimber Lanning. I'm the founder and CEO at Local First Arizona, which is the largest local business coalition in the country. But I got my start in small business, opening Stinkweed's record store in Dobson Ranch in 1987. And the students at MCC and Dobson High pretty much kept me going. So I've been a huge fan of Mesa for a long time. I bought my first home here, right near the downtown corridor. Founding Local First Arizona led me to serve on the Development Advisory Board for the City of Phoenix. I served in the Development Advisory Board for 8 years, and I completely overhauled the adaptive reuse program there to make it easier for small local businesses to open up in their older building stock. A lot of times building code can be very prohibitive and cost ineffective for small local businesses to open. Did you want to say anything, Maria?
I was going to introduce Kimber. I did want to say that Mayor and council members, good morning. Just 2 weeks ago, Economic Development was here to introduce you to our quality retail attraction strategy, and that we are delighted to be here today with Kimber to talk about Local First Arizona and how smaller businesses play such an important and key role in our local economies, and it's a huge complement to everything that we're doing as part of the quality retail attraction strategy. We know that small businesses, especially retail, are essential to growing our economy, making sure it continues to thrive, as well as fostering that unique sense of space or place. And I know that the presentation that Kimber's going to be giving you right now is going to talk more about how we can further leverage current assets that the city has, our existing building stock, the public investments that the city has made, so that we can continue with the revitalization effort in downtown Mesa, as well as development under consideration throughout the rest of the city, whether it's development, new development, redevelopment, or just placemaking. Local businesses will have a very strong role to play in all of that. So thank you, Kimber. Go ahead.
Maria, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for your time today. So I'd like to just open by saying, you know, our organization is called Local First Arizona, not Local Only Arizona, not Local Always Arizona. So the goal of my talk today is really to talk about the economic impact of the choices that you make in the way you're shaping your city. And as I was saying, I really believe that Mesa has unlimited potential because of the diverse array of the landscape that you have here. All of your districts have such a unique character and flavor that I think just being mindful of what you put where is going to be critically important. So you've got existing vintage buildings. They create an essential incubator spaces for your entrepreneurs in the community. You've got these in various parts throughout, but especially in your downtown corridor. And also, you know, you have incredible goals in terms of resiliency, your sustainability goals, and really the greenest building of all is an existing building. One of our core tenets at Local First Arizona is if we can keep a building standing and get it occupied, that's always better than tearing it down. Not always, I shouldn't say that, but generally it's more affordable and you get a more diverse user base. So again, with the opportunities that you have, you've got incredible building stock, you've got walkable streets. I realize I'm showing pictures of just downtown right this minute, understanding that many of you don't have corridors like this in your district. But you've got shade cover, you've got diversity of building size, socioeconomic status, architecture, activities, business, arts, and culture. Every one of your districts has unique opportunities in it. And I'm here today to just talk about the impact of using locally owned businesses. Oftentimes when I say locally owned business, you might think of the one-off mom and pop, which is included in locally owned business, but you've also got Postino. You know, you've got Wilderness, you know, you've got a wide variety of companies that maybe you don't even think of as local, Salad and Go, right? These are companies that are based here. Wildflower Bread Company, good, excellent operators that have multiple locations. And the reason it's important is because those local operators tend to then turn and hire local graphic design firms, local website developing companies, local payroll providers. That keeps more dollars and jobs recirculating right in our local economy. If you have a publicly traded company, they're not going to do business with other companies in your community. And so, you know, I often talk around the valley, but if you look at a community like in West Phoenix, like in Maryvale, for example, Maryvale, over 30 years, they brought in nothing but publicly traded companies into that region. And so the kids growing up there had very little opportunity to start a company or to really build a career in that community. They could get a job at one of those fast food restaurants, or they could move away. And I would just like to ask you to think about what I would call the secondary and tertiary impacts of dollars recirculating through the local economy when you have that blend. It's definitely not a one or the other choice. It's just, let's not lose sight of the importance of creating a sense of place that those local businesses do provide. With your transit, you've also introduced a type of vibrancy here, people being able to come from further distances away. We've done study after study to talk about what is the next generation looking for, how do we compete for talent. The types of things that, you know, years and years and years ago, they used to list very different things than they list now. Safety used to be at the top of the list. Now it's quality public transportation, walkable neighborhoods character, diverse culture, unique experiences. Those are things that are really driven or can be framed by local ownership. So this is a study from the Harvard Business Review about 10 years ago, where it really talked about job growth in America is largely coming from small and mid-sized companies, either business expansion or business retention. That's where we're starting to see job growth emerging. And so less so with business attraction, simply because you're moving jobs around instead of creating new jobs. So I wanted to give you an example. We brought in the woman that did economic development for the city of Pasadena for many, many years. And she was able to compare and contrast old Pasadena versus new Pasadena. Old Pasadena was privately funded. It grew organically. You know, very limited parking opportunities and located in primarily older buildings. And old Pasadena still outperformed new Pasadena, which was completely publicly funded, planned 100% national brands. I bring this to your attention, that is to say, when you have a district where people are willing to travel to that district and to put in the time and effort to go to an area, they're largely looking for a unique experience, whatever that might be. It might be the experience that you get at a Postino versus a big national brand. So we brought this here because there's often a thought that the big nationals are sometimes the only way to drive revenue. And they really aren't. It's about creating a destination. I'm going to talk a little bit more in a moment about Mill Avenue and lessons learned there as well. I also want to highlight that the unique businesses that create that 24/7 vibrant community also attract and retain knowledge economy companies and workforce. They want to live in places that have unique coffee shops, unique walkable brands that are one of a kind, that makes them proud of their hometown. We know that local business drives the type of commitment in a community that makes people feel connected to their place. So this is a study that came out from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and their findings were straight economics, that communities that protected their older buildings and really fostered a combination of large and local performed better by a wide variety of measurables. So, and we can talk about those measurables in just a moment, but where they found that they had older, smaller buildings with mixed vintage blocks, they found not only greater walkability and local ownership, but also younger residents that wanted to live in those areas, a greater mix of people at different stages of life, more nightlife and cultural vitality. They found more jobs, more creative jobs and businesses per square foot, as well as more women and minority-owned businesses. So there really is a direct correlation, and I think that Mesa is truly positioned to be just an epicenter in every district of a nice blend of local creative type businesses with the big nationals. So when we think about, the policy guidance that really shapes these types of communities, we know that preservation and the reuse of older buildings plays a key role. When possible, the city fabric with a high character score should be retained where it exists. So, and Maria and I were talking about this, I think one of the critical things in working with Retail Coach is that you be very, very careful not to use the same color across all of your districts and across all of your communities. And I am going to point this out in Tempe. It's about knowing your customer and what they're going to be looking for. And you're going to want to have more in one area and less in one area. You have an opportunity where you have older building stock to really let that be a focus area for your local business districts. Just, be mindful of not just coming in and trying to do the same thing across the entire city. The urban design lessons from from this report, Older, Smaller, Better, can also be applied to foster newer, smaller, better fabric that is dense, economically high-performing, livable, and compatible with the older fabric as well. And just so you know, I'm actually not sick. I just had a big asthma attack at about 2:30 this morning, so I'm just short of breath, but I'm not sick. So that's how much I wanted to come and talk to you today. So re-urbanism is the talk of the town. People are really talking about opportunities to move back into urban cores. They're gaining population across the U.S. There's an attraction of older mixed-use and walkable neighborhoods, including many historic districts, and the move of tech and creative office market into older buildings. So it was interesting. I sometimes speak around the country in different areas to talk about adaptive reuse, and invariably I'll send to a friend that lives in that community, send me your 10 favorite restaurants. And they'll just send me a list of those 10 restaurants, and I'll go sleuthing online, and they are always in older buildings. Their favorite restaurants are always in older buildings, which is really very, very interesting when you start to think about, what younger people are looking for. So measuring what makes sense for Mesa, in the Older, Smaller, Better study, they looked at intensity of human activity. Where were people? They did little heat maps of cell phone usage on a Saturday night, which I thought was a really innovative way to tell where people were. Economic and cultural vitality, diversity and inclusion, real estate performance. A lot of people tend to not think that older building stock can really drive economic value. But even in real estate performance, they found that to be true. Alternative transportation options, just simply the amount of sales tax revenue generated. So there's some different ways of looking at these mixed character districts. And I'm going to talk to you just for a moment about Tempe. I was very active between about, I'd say, the late 80s into the late 90s, and spent a lot of time in conversation with mayor and council at that time. And they made some errors, and I consider them to be friends today, but I will tell you that Rod Keeling was their downtown district's economic development driver there, and he runs Keeling Schaefer Vineyards out in rural Arizona today. And he would say that Mill Avenue was the biggest mistake that he made in his lifetime. And what he means by that is, you know, they incentivized chains to move in onto Mill. For example, the Borders that they brought in received significant incentives to land there in their downtown. That Borders was not just the lowest performing Borders store in Arizona, but in the country. And why? You can go 5 or 6 miles in any direction and find another Borders where you don't have to pay to park and walk in the heat to get there. Right? So that it's, when I say know your customer, that's what I'm talking about. Putting something in like that in a walkable, metered area is not a smart choice for the city or for the Borders. And Changing Hands, by the way, was on Mill Avenue. And again, they didn't really know the customer there. And I remember so well at that time, a member of the council saying, finally, Changing Hands had been there since the 70s. Finally, we have a bookstore on Mill Avenue, they said, right? And so you can imagine, from an owner perspective, Changing Hands paying all of their taxes, contributing to their city, and then those incentives were then in turn handed over to Borders. So by leveling a lot of the buildings that were there and putting up the monoliths that were there, looking at Centerpoint, which went in 1985, which was by any account never a thriving, many years it went by with less than 25% occupancy. So looking at the recruitment that occurred there was, again, painting every area with the same broad stroke. Really would encourage you to think differently about your different districts. You've got great opportunities to highlight your downtown core. Your Asian district obviously needs special attention. I'm excited about what you have going on in Fiesta. There's some real opportunity in every single one of the districts. And then the last thing I will say is that Tempe Marketplace is truly the best of the best in terms of having a unique destination. So what Tempe did was try to put those chains on their walkable Mill Avenue, but then they came in with Centerpoint. And so that customer looking for that experience is going to be over at Centerpoint. I'm sorry, not Centerpoint. Marketplace, thank you, Tempe Marketplace. And so when I say know your customer, I just mean understand the person that's willing to go and pay to park or hit a parking garage and spend an afternoon walking around a corridor is likely going to be looking for a more unique experience. And a person that wants more of a shopping mall experience is going to be over at the Marketplace. So it's really about knowing one or the other and being very careful. I have a lot of confidence in your economic development team, but just would mention to you how important it will be to know your districts well and to be willing to bring in a variety of things, focusing on local brands where it's appropriate. And again, when I talk about small locally owned businesses, I just want to leave you with the fact that some of these are excellent, pretty large companies. They're just Arizona based, and therefore they're more committed. They're more committed to Arizona. They're not just going to pull out of the community and disappear on us. I mean, they live here. They've been here forever. So I will leave you with that. There's a few other things just to mention. Jobs per 1,000 square feet. There were 36.8% more jobs in communities or in districts where they had protected their older building stock, and then 2 times more women or minority-owned businesses. So, do I have one more second?
Yes.
Okay. The last thing that I will say is, as you look at your different areas, a city like Denver, for example, they've created 7 different neighborhood contexts, which is a lot. It's more than most communities do. But specifically for the reasons that I'm mentioning to you, you have such a variety of opportunities here. They've actually come up with suburban, urban edge, urban, general urban, urban center, downtown, special contexts, and districts. And all of those, they're thinking differently about what kind of attraction they're trying to do in those different districts. So you have a wide variety of places lending to all of these different types of districts. So as you work with an entity like Retail Coach, please be sure that they understand the diverse character and flavor that Mesa has. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you, Kimber. I know we have questions for you. Ms. Spilsbury.
Mine's just out of curiosity. So when you talk about the success of Tempe Marketplace, I've just always been intrigued by the fact that Tempe Marketplace, like often it's hard to get in and out of the parking lot. It's so crowded. It's just booming all the times. And then Riverview's 2 miles away and it has struggled. So you'd think that if Tempe Marketplace, know your customer, why is that working there and not 2 miles away?
Mm-hmm. Mesa Riverview is a little bit of an anomaly. In the sense that I think Tempe Marketplace does an amazing job of marketing themselves on that freeway. You cannot drive by without seeing all those different brands there. It's harder to tell what's in Riverview. I also think that putting the Bass Pro in there as the lead was not a good driver as well. I still think that there's potential there, but again, that would not be potential for local business ownership. I think it has potential for big nationals to go in there. And the honest truth is I can't point to any one specific thing, though, but those are the 2 things that come to my mind.
It's more accessible off the freeway than Marketplace. Marketplace is closer to ASU with the students. Anyways, I've just always tried to figure out why that is the way it is, because
they did some really interesting programming there too. I don't know if you know this or not, but they've had live music inside there for many
Tempe
years.
Marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so they brought people there for a good number of reasons that might have something to do with it as well.
Because I don't know if it's like the stores or the restaurants that make a difference versus one or the other. I'm curious just because thinking across our city and trying to figure out what works where and how do you figure that out. I don't know. It seems like the same exact strategy went into play on those 2 things, and maybe they're not, but that one worked and one didn't. So I don't know. There's a lot. I guess there's maybe some luck involved too. I don't know.
No,
I hope it's not just luck.
Vestar is Tempe Marketplace, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're
So it's a different
they're a
developer.
successor, very successful developer for retail of that type.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done and they put a lot of effort into it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great partner to have.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Jen, I'm guessing you have something to say?
Thank you very much.
Of course.
For being here. Been a big follower of Local First for a very long time and believe wholeheartedly in your mission and all the benefit that you bring to our community and our businesses. One of the reasons I love this is when we're talking about that combination of our retail study and we're talking about the placemaking, right? That these really can come together and creating place and creating, I brought up like neighborhood villages, identifying these places in the context of what we need to do, but creating the experience also.
Sure.
Because just bringing in a retail partner does not necessarily bring in experience. So it's the mix that we bring in, local businesses and the chain. What is that environment? Is it walkable? Is it connected? Does it have that design, and where is that within each of our districts? Downtown is obvious, of course, that it would make sense to start building upon the concept of this mixed use and the experience and attracting a center point, a place of making community within Mesa, because I think there's a lack of identity sometimes of parts of our city. People will identify by the neighborhood they live in, but not the place that they collect, not the place that they gather in restaurants and stuff. They complain, you don't have the places that I want to shop or eat or entertainment, therefore I go to surrounding communities. So in these areas, where is that place that we can start building some ideas and making it walkable and attractive and having that mix? But there isn't going to be one saving salvation by getting, a Cheesecake Factory or whatever, not one brand is going to do that, but in experience, we know that local businesses bring that. And so we have to consider that in the mix and not get carried away with the one thing. I think we learned that in Riverview, Bass Pro Shops being the one thing that's going to activate it. In my opinion, Riverview has some design things that doesn't really feel, it's a side conversation, but doesn't really feel inviting. When I go to Tempe Marketplace, they have narrow corridors with places to sit and waterfalls and plants, and is activated with music, and there's a lot of activity and people want to be around activity. And I feel like Riverview is just shops and there's no activity in the center. It's just you go in Home Depot or you go in Bass Pro or you go in whatever. But that's a side conversation. But the placemaking, the sense of community identity is a mix in our retail, and I want to make sure that we think very, very deeply when we're talking about incentives for retail, what that looks like, so we don't have the one things that's going to save us. Also, we know in having that mix of local businesses, economically is more robust. Those dollars are recirculating within our community and not going to a central headquarters out of state where everything is done, all their accounting, all their marketing, all their is there. So place, like Kimber mentioned, matters, but creating our villages, our centers, they have to be dynamic and a mix. Why would someone be there versus another place, which is the next city over? We have to think about that. And so I appreciate your time and attention to this so that we can design a strategy that works to attract the retail that our citizens are demanding. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I think one of the things you said I'd like to highlight is the importance of beginning to name those districts. When I was growing up here, Arcadia didn't exist, right? You go to other cities and they always have different districts, and I think it's important that you begin to name those districts and really call that out, and the people who live in those places will be additionally proud that they're from that particular area.
That's a great point, and as a member of the, soon-to-be member of the community, you might want to, District 2, wow. Maybe we name our district.
That's funny you say that. I have had this conversation with just a small group of people and have brainstormed on ways to brand and call certain areas of my district, not necessarily District 5, the whole thing, but I have a few that I've been tossing around, actually. I'll have to run by you. But because you're right, it absolutely creates an identity for residents, and then which translates into pride. And that's what we really, I think that's a little piece that we're kind of missing, right? Because Mesa is big, and we don't celebrate or identify and emphasize our little pockets enough. We're kind of all just one, and I think we really need to drill down into these areas and start to make sure that we invest in their unique characters. So, and along that lines, I was in Denver about a month ago. I didn't know it was set up with these neighborhood contacts, but you can absolutely see it. I went in a span of one weekend, to 3 different types of areas within 3 or 4 miles. I was in an urban setting.
Right.
I was in a small adaptive reuse setting of a small community that was old buildings, old houses turned into businesses, and then a suburban setting. I came back and I mentioned that specifically. Within a few miles, you get all of these. So along that line, so I think we all believe in this, it seems, as a council and probably a city. I think our city management is on board with this. How do we convince the people that want to come build here? Because I have a lot of, more than adaptive reuse, it's still greenfield and it's building. How do I convince a developer to build in this way, right? To build in the way that small businesses can afford that new building, and that a mix of small and national tenant is the way to go. I'm having a hard time convincing anybody of that.
Very small.
True.
Yeah, there really is no silver bullet for that. I've been through a lot of conversations with a lot of developers. And I think talking to them about the importance of place and offering that variety. One thing you can do, council member, is call me. And I mean that. I'm more than willing to sit down. I've sat down with so many developers in my day to have a conversation about why it's important that they respond to the needs of the community where they're building. And the work that we've done together in partnership with Mesa, even looking at what we're doing at El Rancho, I've used it as a model again and again to talk about why, in 2,000 square feet, we are able to incubate food entrepreneurs, provide kids cooking classes, meal planning, food pantry. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, and developers need to be responsive to that. And when you have a partner like Local First Arizona, I'd be more than willing to make sure they land on the front page of the paper to celebrate their willingness to contribute meaningfully to your district. So those are the kinds of things that I've learned over time that can move the needle. Most of them are not willing to lose money, but if we can show them that it won't lose them money, then you can usually
Well,
convince
Maria
them.
and I are working on an area right now, and so I will take you up on that.
Sure.
We're going to get you involved in that.
You bet. You bet.
So, thank you, Kimber. I
Of
appreciate you
course.
coming today. And, absolutely, I'm 100% in on your philosophy of local first. Not local only, but local
Right.
first.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone
Thank you.
else?
Council, any additional questions or discussions on this item? Kimber, thank you for being a good Mesa girl and sticking with us. We appreciate you, and we look forward to
Absolutely.
continuing to, we're very excited about the incubator project. I'm counting the days till I can take people to lunch there. So thank you for your partnerships.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Take
All
good
right.
care.
Council, moving on, item 2C is a presentation and direction on Mesa's opioid settlement fund.
Are you good, Mayor, to keep going?
I think so.
So I'll make sure.
Council, it's 10 o'clock.
We can do it.
Do you have the
We can
time
do
to
it.
keep
Okay.
going?
Come on, Chase.
All right.
What?
Enough meetings left to get everything done, so might as well.
Right, well, we are squeezing things, so.
Okay.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Chase Carlisle. I'm an executive manager in the City Manager's office, and with me, I have Lindsay Valenke, who is our Deputy Director of Community Services, Deanna Lopez, who is one of our Human Services coordinators, and Amanda Freeman, who is a Special Project Administrator. And what we'd like to do today is have a discussion with you about the opioid settlement funds that the city has received thus far, and some proposals on how we might be able to allocate the funding that we've received to meet the needs that exist in our community today. So I'd like to start with a little bit of background. I'm sure you are all aware that over the past few years there have been a number of different lawsuits filed against opioid producers and distributors. Those lawsuits have resulted in 10 settlements that total about $50 billion. According to the settlements, those funds are going to be distributed to states over the next 18 years. The distribution actually started a couple years ago. And Arizona is a party of those settlements and is set to receive a total of $1.12 billion. The state of Arizona entered into an agreement with counties and cities and towns across the state called the One Arizona Agreement. This agreement outlines how we can use the opioid settlement funding so that we make sure that the funds actually go towards efforts that will mitigate and respond to opioid overdoses and opioid poisoning. The way the agreement works is that the state receives the funds from these settlements, and then a portion of those funds are allocated to the counties. And then from there, the counties distribute the funds to the cities and towns. So of the $1.12 billion that the state gets, the state is holding on to 44% of those funds to use for programs, and 56% of those funds are being distributed to counties. Of the amount of money that Maricopa County is going to receive, Mesa will receive 6.06% of those funds. To date, over the last couple of years, we have received $4.5 million, and over the next 16 years, we are anticipating that we will receive $17 to $22 million. The reason that there's a range is because the settlements are of different amounts, and there's different timing as to when we receive the money. And so we anticipate this is the amount, but as things change, it might change in the future.
Before you leave this slide,
yes,
I would guess Mesa is more than 6% of the population of Maricopa County. How did we arrive at that number?
Thank you, Mayor. The formula that was set out that determines how the funding is distributed is based on the amount of opioids that are shipped to a particular area, as well as the number of incidents. And there are a couple other items in that formula, but that is the basis. It's based off of the opioids.
It's not necessarily a bad thing to be made.
I get that, yeah, okay, so we're not as impacted as other.
But it's still an impact, but probably not to the degree it might be in other communities in Maricopa County.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will say that Maricopa County also holds on to a share as well, so the county also has money that they use for programs. So.
Thank you.
So in the One Arizona Agreement, I said there are multiple different categories and uses that are outlined for the funding that fall into four core strategies. And they are prevention and education, early intervention and treatment, harm reduction and rescue, and recovery and resiliency. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what each of those strategies are and some of the things that we can use the funding for, and some proposals on how we would like to allocate that funding. But before we go there, I just want to show a few pieces of data that put some of the context around this issue for our city. This map right here shows the number of incidents that our Mesa Fire and Medical first responders responded to that were opioid overdose incidents over the last 6 years. The reason why I want to show this is to point out that this is an issue that affects every single neighborhood in Mesa. The darker the dot is, the more incidents that have been responded to, but this is really a community-wide issue that affects all of us. The second graph takes that same data and breaks the opioid overdose incidents out by age categories. And what you can see is that we peak, the number of incidents peaks with people who are between 30 and 34 years old, but the majority of cases are really between 30 and 44 years old. And what we want to do, and some of the proposals that we'll present today, is to address the population that's more the teenage, young adult, youth categories, because we'd really like to see that dramatic increase that we see at 14 years old decrease, and hopefully we'll then be able to flatten out that peak that we see there. So the first strategy that we are going to talk about is prevention and education. Prevention education plays a vital role in deterring the early onset of substance abuse by promoting life skills and awareness about the risks associated with substance abuse. There was a survey conducted by the Arizona Justice Commission. It's called the Arizona Youth Survey, where they surveyed 8th graders, 10th graders, and 12th graders. They do it every 2 years. And the 2024 survey indicates that only 54% of youth across the state remember seeing any sort of advertisement or education that warns of the dangers of substance abuse. And so some examples of activities in the Arizona One Agreement that this funding could be allocated towards are things like youth education programs, public education campaigns, and then removing drugs off the street, so drug take-back programs. What we are proposing is to allocate some of the funding that we've received thus far, so some of that $4.5 million, to the Mesa Prevention Alliance, which conducts school-based programs in Mesa schools. They provide a prevention-based education that focuses on resiliency and positive coping skills. The second,
If I could, since it's about schools. Are school districts receiving any funding or only cities and counties?
This funding is going to cities and counties.
And
Mayor,
so
Councilmember
are
Spilsbury.
there county and state programs that you're aware of that are going to be working on youth education?
Mayor, Councilmember Spilsbury, I am not aware of any. I'd have to do a little bit more research on that.
Okay, and then obviously we have Gilbert, Queen Creek, Higley schools in our school, or in our city boundaries as well. So this is very Mesa Public Schools focused, it looks like. So wondering how that's affected.
So Mayor, Councilmember Spilsbury, let me correct one thing just came to mind. The state did just recently announce that they would be distributing naloxone kits to school districts across the state. So that is one program that will be happening.
I think RSROs already have kits on each campus that I'm aware of. Does anyone know?
So yeah.
It's my understanding anyways.
And the Mesa Prevention Alliance will actually serve any Mesa school with a Mesa zip code. So if it's out in East Mark and it's Queen Creek, but it's
So you mean
Mesa.
City of Mesa?
This is City of Mesa schools.
Not just, okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's not super clear. So the Mesa Prevention Alliance, is that a city alliance? That's a school district alliance?
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, Mayor,
I'm getting
Councilmember
confused of who's
Spilsbury.
coming in on this.
So the Prevention Alliance is actually run by Community Bridges. It's a community coalition. So they are part of that. They also include Mesa Police and Fire in that coalition and other local organizations, parent groups, and things like that. So it's a collaboration where they come together and really focus on education programs and prevention for youth.
Okay.
Community Bridges does have a current program that is in Mesa Public Schools, as well as in Eastmark, and they've also worked in Desert Ridge before.
You're talking about those high schools? Eastmark
They
and
work
Desert
in
Ridge High
middle
Schools?
schools.
Oh, and middle schools?
Right now, in the Eastmark Middle School specifically.
So I know Mesa Public Schools has like a task force on this, so I don't know what partnering we're doing on that, and if they're getting any money to help support their programming, or if this is just the programming we're doing. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I think most of you are aware, my niece died of a fentanyl overdose from oxycodone in 2017. And so to me, this is like personal, but also here we go. Anyways, the education piece is just so important because most kids aren't going to take the hard drug, or they're not going to take fentanyl or whatever if they aren't doing drugs, but they would take an oxycodone because that's in their parents' medicine cabinet and they think it's harmless, not realizing what's happening on the streets and that everything's laced with it and that it could kill you, right? So the education piece to me is where we really, really need to be focusing to prevent. And I just don't feel like we're doing quite enough. And I'm not clear on what this looks like, where if they're not getting money, I feel like we should be providing money to help their programming if it's not the same as our programming. When I've had several conversations with Chief Cost like, what can we as a city do? What can we as a council do with this opioid epidemic? And his main thing that he told me was prevention. And so I just feel really strongly we need to be doing much, much more on the education piece, which is our junior high and our high schools. And this doesn't feel like enough to me, I guess.
So Mayor and Councilmember Spilsbury, thank you for sharing.
You've heard all this. I've talked to you about it all.
So this is recommendations for moving forward and just starting to have some of those conversations. This is
Okay.
not this is opening that conversation and permission to move forward. So we know that there are existing programs within Mesa Public Schools that we've talked to Mesa Prevention Alliance about. And they've expressed that they work closely with Mesa Public Schools specifically. And these programs exist, but they don't are not provided to all the kids in the middle schools. They're currently in 6 schools in Mesa. There are 6 more that are kind of waiting in line, many that have expressed interest, and they just don't have the funding to do that. There are at least 2,000 kids that aren't being met with this program right now. And then there is also a diversion program that they have that is children that are in the juvenile justice system, and it's meant to provide education and divert them away from those, some of the behaviors that they've been experiencing and be a positive resilience-based program. But we can certainly meet more directly with Mesa Public Schools and make sure that we're exploring all avenues.
Yeah, and I think Mayor and Councilor and Councilor Spilsbury, today we're just kind of introducing the subject. Yeah. There are some very specific recommendations from our public safety folks, just some equipment and some things like that. But overall, we're really just trying to create the framework, make sure we're kind of moving in the right direction. Okay. We will return back to, and this is the kind of feedback we need, right? Mm-hmm. And then we'll come back to you with very specific, the program and the specific dollar allocations, but we didn't want to assume that before we had this kind of conversation. Okay. You will see some very specific incinerators and body scanners and things like that we're going to recommend, but these larger community engagement, we know we have to go back and come back here, but we want to make sure we're heading in the right direction.
Okay, yeah, so I guess, I think you heard what I have to say, especially because I've had conversations with all of you about this, but yeah, just to also make sure that all of District 6 kids, because that's a lot of kids that live in Mesa that are all, part of it. Yes. Perfect.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, as I'm flipping through, I didn't get a chance to read this before. So you have some dollar amounts in the next few slides on intervention and but we didn't have any on this other than a police incinerator.
Right. Like I said, there's some specific projects we know there's a dollar amount for, and some of these others we need to come back with more details. Like we know how much the incinerator is going to cost.
Okay. Like that's an estimate, like, because it says $1 million for this and $1 million, like, so I'm assuming where is that at? That's on slide 9. I don't know, we're way ahead, but like, oh no, that's the community grant one. Oh, there it is, slide 10. Anyways, like you said, $1 million, $1 million, and $1 million, and those are just estimates you're saying then?
We have to figure out how to allocate what we have and what's coming, but we'll come back to you with the specific programs. And ultimately, when we make the awards to these, a lot of these can be nonprofits, these programs, again, we'll come back to council and validate, whether the amount of money. It's just kind of a high level budget right now if we're trying to figure this out. But we just wanted to start a conversation. As we started this conversation with our outside partners as well as internal, the internal is obviously we had some more specific, like, hey, I need an incinerator. We need more navigators. So we could put $1 on those. Some of these projects, we wanted to make sure is public outreach, education, then we'll sit down. And we're just trying to be, I guess, trying to figure out how to fill these different buckets or set aside some dollars. So when we're having that conversation with the stakeholders, we can kind of put it into a, context if it's about this much dollars we might be looking forward to. We still have to come back to council.
Because like again, we're way ahead in the presentation now, but since we're talking about it, like the proposed funding is around $3 million and we've received 4.5, but we think we would maybe receive $1 million-ish a year. But but we don't really know what that looks like. So we don't want to do a bunch of programs that we can't back up with funding.
We almost have to wait until we have the money, then each year we'll come to you and say, okay, we have this. here's what we're proposing.
Right, so I understand being cautious so that we're not like putting forward something that we're gonna not have the money to be able to.
We don't want to obligate beyond what we actually have in our pockets.
Right, but you're right, I was also confused, because there's not really dollar amounts, but then we have proposed funding allocations.
Yeah, but I would agree with you, Julian, that I'd like to see, I mean, especially since when we look at the chart and you had kind of said, Chase, sorry. To go back to the first slide, that, that target is the youth, right? So that we don't get into all the costs once the addiction already starts. And that, so I would like Julie, I would like to see more emphasis on that. I understand we don't have hard numbers, like we know how much an incinerator is, but it doesn't seem like, even though we said that that's the target age group, we haven't put as much effort into.
You want to see a dollar amount kind of.
Yeah,
Okay,
and I want
that.
the primary effort to be in that.
Okay.
And I want to see what, I mean, where do we put drugs now? I mean, why do we need an incinerator?
We don't have it.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Goforth. Right now, the drugs that are taken off the streets, we actually have to drive to Globe to dispose of. The incinerator would just improve efficiency and allow us to not have to make that drive.
And I frankly, like, I've done a lot of research looking at like what other cities and communities are doing in this youth space or education or whatever, like a big, huge awareness campaign, right? Like that, like we're putting everywhere, whatever, billboards, ads, TikToks, like whatever. I just think there's a lot more the city could do than just saying to a nonprofit, we'll do your school-based program. Like let's make it bigger, beef it up. I mean, I don't know what they're doing, so I would like to explore what this Prevention Alliance school-based program is. I just would like to do it more widespread and broadly across our entire community, where we really, really could get the word out to everyone that's in a charter school or that's in a private school or, anything like that, so.
And while we're stopped for a second, do we have any constraints or from the county or whatever entity telling us this is how you shall spend the money, or these are the categories that we will approve the spending?
So Mayor, Councilmember Duff, we are constrained by the different settlements and the One Arizona Agreement. But the One Arizona Agreement contains so many different program areas that we really we feel like we can be able to, as we identify the needs of the community, fit the programming into those categories that are in that agreement.
We can come back with, I think what you're wanting to see is really that commitment of the allocation of those dollars. We can do that.
Like how much would something like
Okay,
that cost?
can we maybe?
And I would think if there's money left over, you buy an incinerator and a body scanner, right? The purpose is that education piece, is that really getting out, getting into the community, right? And maybe making a difference in the ultimate outcomes, right? And then if there's money left over, great, let's do. I mean, that's how I would approach it. That's just my 2 cents on. I don't know why we would start with that. Doesn't directly affect, does it? Preventing
It just fits in.
opioid
It fits in this
addiction.
category. That's what we're trying to
Yeah.
do, right? It's not a priority. It's just fits in that category.
Okay.
So you have all these different pages that we're going to go through real quick, and they just have, here's the category, here's what we're proposing. We're not prioritizing at this point. So, but we hear you, and so let us. So obviously, communicating.
Well, to be fair, you heard from 2 of us, so
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
we should probably make sure that the
Well,
rest
maybe
of
we
the
should just
council,
get
I don't
through
know.
and highlight
Yeah.
categories, and because that is everything you're saying is true, but there is a reality on the street today dealing with people who are addicted and are homeless and are committing crimes, and so we're trying to. You're absolutely right. Prevention is important, but at the end of the day,
That's
we are
the harm reduction
confronting
and
that
rescue,
on a
the
daily
resiliency
basis, and
recovery,
so
yeah.
that's where the navigators come in, and
Yeah.
this idea. And we are trying to prevent drugs from coming into our detention facilities. And the amounts that we're proposing, those are not significant compared to, and remember, we've got 16 years to keep this going. This is not a one-time shot. This is an annual conversation with council.
Those, the scanner and the incinerator are one-time costs,
Yes.
right?
Yes, yes.
Well, I'd just like to add, I think as we look at the data, the opioid overdose incidents by police and fire, at least fire and medical, we have a street issue as well as drugs out on the street. And so tactically, you have to look at, we can do prevention over here, but then how do we attack the street levels where I'm at, and helping our law enforcement have the correct funding for that? And do we have to increase our gang, our street crimes units as well, funding there? Because if you look at the heat map, it's prevalent all throughout our city, and it kind of, mostly in West Mesa. So I think funding needs to be there. Is prevention, because you have pharmaceuticals in the homes as well, and people are getting those drugs there and overdosing. So there's a lot of things that can be done for this, and I don't have all the words for it, but we have to massage this and come up with a way to fund this appropriately over the next 16, 18 years. I appreciate the direction it's going, but I think we need to do two approaches in our policing, and then allowing our fire and medical department to have the right resources to respond as well.
Yeah, I think part of that response, why we're suggesting having navigators being able to respond to a lot of those calls where we're not having to put our public safety personnel in that position. That's been our success to date. So yes, that's exactly how we're trying to address the first responder situation.
Yeah, thank you.
So the second strategy that's outlined in the One Arizona Agreement is early intervention and treatment, which allows providers to identify and address substance abuse misuse as early as possible and facilitate the access to appropriate treatment options. So again, some of the specific examples that are outlined in the One Arizona Agreement include community navigators, pregnancy and postpartum care for women. This includes care and treatment for babies who are exposed to substances while they were in the womb, as well as mobile intervention, treatment, and recovery services. And so as we had our internal discussions, one of the proposed ways that we would like to allocate this funding is to expand our community outreach navigator program. And Lindsay, you can speak a little bit more to that. Deanna?
Yeah. Mayor and Council, so we currently do have navigation services for heat relief through Phoenix Rescue Mission. This will allow us to support that and actually fill some current gaps. Services aren't really throughout 7 days, so allowing us to add 6 new navigators will allow us to fill those gaps to a 7-day service. They will be focusing on education and prevention, and supporting with treatment as well as they're making, connections with individuals out in the streets. They will have transportation available as individuals are accepting of services, they can connect them to those agencies, and also offer other wraparound services.
Julie?
So are these 6 more CBI navigators? This is 6 navigators through the city of Mesa?
That's a Phoenix Rescue Mission.
Oh, Phoenix Rescue Mission. So, sorry if you said that. So 6 new navigators that we're just giving the money, we're adding the money we're giving to Phoenix Rescue Mission for 6 more navigators. And they have plenty of staff, employees
It's also money that we won't have the funding for, correct?
Yes, so Mayor and Councilmember Spilsbury, it's expansion of the team that we have. So it is continued street outreach to help people that are unhoused, but really creating a focus on education and prevention measures around opioid use. We are hearing a lot of stories about people that are on the street that are ready to go into treatment, but they don't know where to go, or they're having trouble connecting to a specific service, and they don't know how to get there. So this peer support team is really good at doing those and making those connections and then transporting there and being really a help in making sure they get to where they need to go. And as Deanna mentioned, we have a great team right now. They are not fully focused on this, although they do touch on this topic frequently. This would really allow us to expand services and make our whole street outreach program whole.
And where are they logistically located? Like, where is their physical location?
Yes, so Mayor and Councilmember Spilsbury, many of them, they just have vehicles, so they can come into our office and we are game planning with them regularly with Office of Homeless Solutions. But they actually start and end their day on the street. So they're in their vehicle all day, going out to different sites. We're programming them on where to go, or working with park rangers or police officers. So
my next question was like, if a park ranger or a police officer runs across, they would then call and get that navigator out there to then continue with them.
It's intended to be a resource so we don't have to respond with sworn personnel. That's the key.
Yes, and they're already very connected to those teams, and then this would just allow us to go later into the night in parks, for example, and just have a more of a presence there and take the load off the rangers.
Specifically like opioid focused, or
Well, I think when we've looked at the data of our homeless population and those who have an addiction and related opioids, it's fairly significant, right?
Yeah.
It's
Oh, for
not
sure,
every
yes.
one of them.
Right.
But I can't remember, I'm trying to remember, I've seen the chart where we
Right.
track that.
How many-
It's significant,
yeah.
right? And so the idea of being on the streets, and it may be someone who's not creating any problem, but they can walk up and this is our way to engage and try to provide education and assistance.
And education to people that are not users, but just always providing that education and resources to everyone that they outreach to.
Okay.
I think we're starting to bump up to some time constraints. So Chase, can you kind of give us the Reader's Digest version on the way out here?
In other words, we need to be quiet.
We'll just be as efficient as we can be here.
Okay, so just really quickly, our proposed activities for harm reduction and rescue. We wanted to highlight that currently the fire and medical department has an naloxone leave behind program where when they respond to incidences, they are, if they feel like a leave behind kit would be helpful, they can leave a kit with the person or a family member or friend. But we are also proposing to use allocating some of this funding for a body scanner for the police department holding facility, which we are estimating right now is about $188,000. But all of these strategies really lead up to the final strategy, which is resiliency and recovery, which is helping individuals with substance abuse disorder break free of all those negative impacts. And what we are proposing is to address this area is to create a community grant program where our community partners can apply for funding for any one of these categories. So if they have a program in prevention and education, they can apply for funding. If it's in treatment, they can apply for funding. And we'd like to allocate $1 million for this grant program in 2025. What we would be seeking are projects that identify the gaps in services and some of those things that we've talked about today, and address the essential needs in Mesa. And we want this initial round of funding, this $1 million, to prioritize programs that serve youth and children. That is our focus area for this initial round of funding. And again, the funding would be used towards serving the residents of Mesa. Organizations would be awarded a minimum amount of $50,000, but then we are also requesting or proposing $100,000 to pay for program administration of the grant. They're just managing that program has a cost associated with it. So in summary, for the 2025, what we are proposing is that we allocate $1 million for community education and outreach, which would include the Navigators and Mesa Prevention Alliance, and then $1 million towards public safety. We know the specific items that we mentioned today don't add up to $1 million, but we are continuing to have conversations with both departments and identifying needs that they have, and then the $1.1 million for the community grant program.
And Mayor and Council, I would say this too, as we go through this evolving, if we find that there's a great outreach program or community education, we need to bump this up, we can always do that, right? And so, as well as the public safety programs, but we needed to get started. We wanted to kind of at least give you all a framework. We'll come back with more details on all these. Your feedback's been very important for us, and we're just trying to figure out what's the right I don't know, balance is the right word, just kind of figuring out, here's how we're trying to address the needs and that are available to us.
So, sorry.
Please.
I'm sorry, trying to hurry. First of all, the community grant program, do we have a timeline? Like, how soon could this money get out? Like, I know it takes forever to get the applications and the process, so.
So if we receive direction from the council today to go in this direction, we'll go back and we'll develop a timeline. We need to develop the application and the scoring criteria, but we anticipate that we'll be able to have all of that ready in February.
So we'll come back to council with all that information.
So is there a possibility that if, I don't know, 4 great organizations all put in an application and they all wanted 50,000 that we, or, you know, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
sorry, you know, whatever, I didn't do my math right. But if they all wanted, if we didn't have enough money to fund, like that we could, if they were a
So
great
the
program.
Council, that's what's nice, it's not the federal government, you know, but we do only have so much right in the bank today.
Yes, yes.
And so we can have that conversation, for sure.
But so hopefully within like the next 6 months, the money could get out there,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah,
that?
oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay, and then public safety, so those 2 things are like $240,000, right?
One time.
So, in one time, but we have $1 million up there because we're just thinking they're gonna get back to us with some other
Well,
ideas?
and we'll bring those back, yeah, have that conversation.
Okay, I just don't wanna like sit on this money for so long
Fair enough,
that
fair
it's
enough.
not
No,
getting
no,
out
that's
into the
fair,
community.
that's fair.
Okay. I'll be done, I'll be done.
Great. Mr. Riddick.
Just on the outreach piece, it seems like we're not sure what other entities are doing. You know, in the past, I think, you know, I was engaged in the late 2000s on that big meth outreach program for youth from the Montana Project that really like hit hard on meth use and those kinds of things. So maybe having like similar discussions on the county side and the state side, piggybacking what we can do on Mesa, just some thought and mapping out what other larger like county and state governments are doing to outreach a program like this with these types of funds would be something important to just have, right, and see so that we don't duplicate efforts.
No,
right?
we'll
So-
stay in contact with them. I think everybody's kind of the same position we are. We're all trying
Figuring
to
out,
figure out
yeah.
what we're gonna do, but we'll,
Okay.
right, there's a way, you have those conversations.
Yes.
Yeah, we can. do that.
Perfect, all right, thank you.
The only thing I'll add is I was interested in reading the county health department's stats on heat-related illness, and as much or more than, you know, the common denominator being.
That's where I saw that.
Yeah, lack of shelter, it was it was opioid use.
Yeah, that
Because
was it. That's right,
the
yeah.
physical impact of opioid use makes you very susceptible
Yes.
to heat-related illness. So I'll just remind you of what you already know in that regard. And so if somewhere under these community education and outreach, community grant support, I mean, I suspect or hope that we'll get some proposals to address that
Yeah.
need.
And hopefully that's where navigators can play a role, because they can be out on the street having those conversations.
All right, thank you very much. Did that give you the direction that you needed?
We'll come back, we'll be
Okay.
coming back.
Thank you very much. Next item, item 3, is to acknowledge various receipt of meeting minutes. Thank you, Mr. Freeman, for making that motion. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Pillsbury, for raising your hand on that. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next is current events and conferences attended. Council members, anything you'd like to share? Ms. Pillsbury?
I'll go really quick. Tuesday and Wednesday, Tuesday was Turkey Tuesday, so we had just under 1,500 turkeys donated, partnering with our engineering department, City of Mesa, and United Food Bank. And then I helped yesterday at the Thanksgiving distribution over at the Convention Center. They served over almost 2,400 meals, and the goal was 1,800. So 2,400 different meals were
How
given
many
out
vehicles?
yesterday. Oh, well, I mean, some of them would pick up 2 or 3 or 4,
Yeah.
but I mean, typically each vehicle, it was crazy.
No.
If you were in downtown yesterday.
Hours and hours of long lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was a delay on their part when they said they were going to have food available and it wasn't. And you had traffic backed up all the way down to Maine and everywhere, so.
Well, it was ready by 9. It was, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Something happened,
Something
but
happened that they couldn't, but when they said they were going to open, they didn't open. So.
I think just people got there way, way early.
No,
Anyways, it's
yeah.
just interesting to see, like, I think, you know, this was a huge blessing for a lot of people in our community, so we want to thank United Food Bank for that. That was why I brought it up. Thanks.
Great. Anything else, council? I'll briefly say that I want to thank the Mesa Hispanic Network for inviting me to speak to them a couple of days, maybe one day ago. Also, we had a great ribbon cutting for JX Metals yesterday, a wonderful semiconductor supply chain company that's going to sputtering targets, apparently. Google that if you can. That's an essential part of manufacturing semiconductor chips. So that's it's a really big deal that we have JX Metals out in District 6. And then I appreciated the invitation last night to talk to Leisure World about the history of Mesa. So that was fun. Mr. Brady, what does our schedule of future meetings look like?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. So our next meeting of council will be December 2nd. That's a Monday. It will be meeting here in the council chambers here. We do have a few more presentations we need to make because of some items that we weren't able to cover today that are on the December 2nd and coming up. So we'll probably have an earlier start time, maybe around 4:45 or 5 o'clock, but we'll put that in the notice. But we'll be meeting here on December 2nd.
All right. Thank you very much. That concludes our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you, Mr. Summers and Mr. Freeman. And Ms. Duff, excuse me. Oh,
I
I'm
just
sorry,
want to mention a
please.
couple of
Yes.
things. I wanted to thank Mesa PD for holding their Sentinel Review open house. It was tremendous, well attended, and looked at the investigative process of officer-involved shootings and what they're doing and the transparency and how they're going forward. Well attended. So thank you for Mesa Police Department for all you do. And last night I did attend East Valley Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
Councilmember Freeman was
I
there.
went late.
And, oh, you were there?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Welcoming President Dr. Richard Daniel of MCC to the community. I'm so happy that they did that and made that a special event. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, anything else we need to share? All right, is there, happy Thanksgiving. Is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned.